Hello, everyone. Welcome to the World Series of Board Games coverage for the semifinal of the main event. Today, we are looking at Terraforming Mars. My name is Chris George, but you're not here to hear me. We are joined by the co-commentator extraordinaire, three-time Terraforming Mars ring champion, Levi Moreno. How's it going, Levi?
It's going great. I'm excited to be here. I'm excited to see this game. I haven't been able to. I actually have no idea what happened in it. So I've wanted to see it, and I'm looking forward to it.
Awesome. Yeah, because you were at another table. You were at the Arc Nova table currently
Yes, I could
at
hear. I
this
could
time
hear.
period.
I could hear the game going in the background, but I wasn't. Unfortunately, they don't let you play the same game twice. I think I would have probably done better in that one.
Fortunately for everybody at this table, I think they all would have been pretty scared since you are the only person in WSBG history to win Terraforming Mars, to win 3 rings of the same event. I am so thrilled to have you here to commentate on this game, and I think it's going to be a lot of fun.
I think it will be. I'm excited to. I'm excited to see the game. Excited to do my first commentary. So this should be a
Yeah.
lot of fun.
Awesome. Well, we're going to turn over to the table, but before we do, if you want to get your tickets to WSBG, don't forget you can get your tickets at WSBGVegas.com, and you can use the code IAMIN to save some money off of your ticket. We want you to save money off your ticket so that you can come, you can play in Terraforming Mars, you can dethrone Levi, uh, you can give him some competition. So we're looking forward to seeing you all there. But it's going to be a longer game, so why don't we turn over to the table and meet our players?
Sounds good.
In seat 1, we have our first time Damon Singer has won a ring. We have our 2024 Raw champion taking on Terraforming Mars, sitting in seat 1. I believe this was Damon's first WSBG appearance, and he took home the ring for Raw, which is an exciting game always to watch. In seat 2, somebody to look out for, we have Nick Henning. Nick Henning sporting his 4 rings there. Nick won 2 rings in 2022, Dominant Species Marine and Great Western Trail. And then in 2024, Nick won Lost Ruins of Arnak and Earth as well. Nick also was at a final table for Terraforming Mars, so I know he was pretty excited to get that in the draw. In seat 3, we have James Liao. James Liao, who is our 2024 Cascadia champion. James took out PJ, the previous Cascadia champion, in the semifinals, and then moved on using Hawk C, the pinwheel of death, to claim his spot into that final, the semifinal table. And then in seat 4, we have Dalton Versack. Dalton won Great Western Trail 2024. I believe this might be Dalton's first WSBG. And Dalton also having played against Nick in quite a few competitions as well. I know they know each other and are friendly or maybe frenemies. I don't know. I think we'll find out. But I feel like Dalton also has some Terraforming Mars knowledge around the table.
I love the Hawkins.
And so we're zooming into the table right now. We're hearing the voice of Judge Anthony Cicenti, who came in second in the 2022 final table against you, Levi. I think it was just a 1-point difference in that game. So Anthony making sure, just explaining that, like, hey, everybody can, we're going to play, and they're talking about sort of automatic triggers right now, I believe.
Yeah, Anthony was a monster. That game was obviously extremely close. And Nick I played with last year, as you mentioned. I think from what I've seen from Nick's games, he tends to favor a more engine-based approach. Likes going engine, likes going Jovians, likes to try to play longer games. Obviously, a super versatile and talented gamer. Has his own YouTube channel where he vlogs while he's at the event. He posts strategy guides and commentaries on videos.
Yeah,
really exciting to see him play. Really exciting to see these other players as well. I don't know a lot about the other 3, but
I don't want red or green because I'm colorblind. But
we'll see how they do.
We'll see. The players are just choosing their colors right now. And the YouTube channel that Nick runs is called Phoenix. You can see Nick sporting his badge saying Phoenix on it in that top left corner, which is his player area. So we're coming in right after the players have revealed their corporation, and they're going to be telling us how many cards they're going to be keeping.
Okay, so that costs you $12.
Yeah, so see Nick has Vitor, a corporation that favors a more engine-style approach. So no surprise there. James has Saturn System. Tends to lean into a more engine-based approach, but he can play a terraforming style with Saturn System as well. And Valley Trust also tends to incentivize a lot of engine building. So I'd expect a slower game for a 4-player game. Chongqing Mars can sort of go either way.
Yeah.
So I would expect this game to have a slower tempo, but 4-player games can go fast anyway because the global parameters don't change with player count. So 4 players tends to be a lot for Terraforming Mars, and so heat and oxygen can go very quickly and the game can end abruptly. But based off of the corporations alone, I would expect this to be a somewhat slower game.
Yeah. And just for the card counts of what players kept, Damon kept 4 cards, Nick kept 8. He said, like an amateur, I'm going to keep 8. And James said, like an ultimate pro, I'm going to keep 10. And then Dalton kept 7, I believe.
Yeah, Nick had an interesting strategy in the final table last year where he played in Ventrix, kept his entire starting hand and claimed planner on Gen 1, which was a fun strategy. Nick likes his cards, that's for sure.
Just got pets out, I remember, and that was it on that first gen.
Well, Vitor does encourage you to keep a lot of cards because you get that 3 credit discount whenever you play cards with victory points. So you definitely want to have a lot of cards to play to take advantage of that corporate ability. It is very strong if you can get a lot of card draw and income to support it.
Business Empire? 11 out?
So we see Damon, who started with Valley Trust, starting with a pretty couple strong preludes. I guess you can speak to their strength too, Levi. Starting with that 3 power production, and then the ocean and 2 heat. And so Damon drops it on the 2 card draw immediately. Probably why he kept fewer cards than the other players.
Yeah, it's always nice when you're going first in these games and you get an ocean prelude because you know that you're not going to be contested on that double card spot. Oftentimes, if you're going last and you keep an ocean prelude, all the good oceans will already be taken by the time it gets back around to you. Nick, interestingly, kept Business Empire and Huge Asteroid, which both have costs associated with them. So in addition to keeping a bunch of cards, he's going to be whacked, I think. I know Business Empire is 6 credits. I don't remember how much Huge Asteroid is. I think it's 5. So
I think it's 5, yeah.
Yeah, I think he's going to be losing 11 on his preludes in addition to all the cards he's keeping. So I'd expect a relatively weak Gen 1. Saturn Systems going for Jovian, unsurprisingly, and Donation, which I actually really like in large multiplayer games. I like really big cash infusions early. And Dalton getting the Experimental Forest down, which is one of the best preludes. And he will be drawing into 2 more plant tags with that card. I think of the preludes, it looks to me like Dalton probably got the best out of the group. I think Experimental Forest is exceptionally strong.
Yeah,
it's a point, it's an income, but it also gives you a very substantial lead in contesting Gardener, and I think it's really important to have a milestone in mind to target it. And Experimental Forest is one of the best ways to get one.
Well, Chongqing Mars also having that potential to go pretty strong for Builder too, because they do get that discount and they start with a building tag. But and what a draw from Dalton, getting that lake
Arctic
card.
Algae.
Arctic Algae.
Arctic Algae is like probably one of the best cards you could have played with Experimental Forest.
Yeah.
I mean, it might actually be the best. I mean, it's like kelp farming.
We'll see.
I mean, yeah, that might actually be the best one. I'm struggling to think of a better card you'd want to flip with Experimental Forest, so obviously he's super excited about that.
I think we hear Nick at the table saying exactly that same thing. He goes, okay, just the best cards you could get.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, it's only 1 ocean down, that's going to get a lot of value.
Yeah.
Nope, this is still part of the fresh deck, yeah. Those other ones are...
The only kind of unfortunate thing for Dalton is that anybody develops oceans before he gets his chance to play it. He's going to lose a little bit of value there, but you can never be too disappointed. Getting one of the best preludes and one of the best random outcomes from it certainly puts him in a pretty good position.
Yeah. Yeah, I always find that the offside to Experimental Forest is that so many of the plant tags have requirements, and you have to wait a little bit until you have to play it, and so your engine sort of, it doesn't help that initial engine, but it's still like a very strong addition to your hand for later on.
Yeah, you're 100% correct. The other sort of thing is it's kind of awkward. There's not a very clear place that's, best to start with a greenery. So the initial placement can be kind of tricky. He opts for going to the south for the double card bonus, which is good. It does kind of imply that maybe he's also trying to play a somewhat slower game, favoring card draw over,
He was like,
Right.
this is the thing I think.
over, for example, placing it closer to more plants where he could quickly push oxygen, but we'll see. And experimental force having a plant tag itself is actually pretty relevant. I mean, some of the most powerful plays you can make are insects and NRA, and getting those plant tags to turn this on early can be tricky.
Right.
Experimental force gives you that as well. And Damon, taking his Valley Trust Prelude gets the Aquifer Turbines, which will then place another ocean, get more power production. So he's up to 5 power production, which...
That's wild.
Yeah, that implies that he might have a bumper in his hand, so one of those cards that lets you spend 4 power to increase the oxygen. That's very often the reason why you would want to see somebody going for 4 power early, because usually you don't have a reason to do that. So I would expect that Damon probably has a bumper in his hand, but
$3.
but we'll see.
Yeah, or he could be sitting on Strip Mine or a couple of those cards which require that 2 power cost as well to put them out onto the board.
Yeah, Strip Mine would make a lot of sense. Although if he had Strip Mine, I think he would have placed it on the double steal, but I could be wrong.
Right.
I think he could afford one anyway. He has $22. Yeah, I think Strip Mine costs 26. So if he had Strip Mine, I would think he'd place it on double steal, but I'm not certain. Unfortunately for Dalton, that does mean he does lose one of those oceans for his practicality.
And maybe that's why Damon chose it. That's the only reason he saw Dalton. He saw the Arctic Galaxy. He said, you know what? Let's limit it right now. He had 2 other preludes in his hand that would have been better, but he said, no, we're going hard.
Gotta shut down those 2 plants.
I'll be really happy later.
It is interesting. I know you're joking, but it is kind of interesting how
My second action is subterranean.
these targeted hate play. Speaking of oceans, Nick also developing an ocean before it gets back around to Dalton.
Take this.
See where he chooses to place it. I would expect probably just between the other 2 oceans for money flexibility, but maybe on the titanium.
Yeah, he doesn't really have much money left. I think Nick's sitting there with maybe two money left.
Yeah. Vitor's not a super rich corporation. He lost 11 in the preludes. Plus he kept a bunch of cards. But yeah, I would expect that he'd probably just place it between the 2 oceans. But we'll see. I mean, obviously the titanium is more theoretical value, but the flexibility, usually space cards tend to be developed in the mid to late game.
Take 4 now money.
And yeah, he does go between the double ocean spot to claim that $4. Makes sense.
Card flip.
We also had Nick making a decision as his first action in the game to fund an award, and he was saying, well, I've already lost Scientist, I've already lost Thermalist, so I guess I'll pick Banker, and somebody else will be really happy down the line.
Nice.
Yeah, interesting he funds Banker. Kind of makes sense. He has Business Empire. I assume he has money production in his hand. And James going for the I forget exactly what it's called. It's the volcano placement card that does the double heat bump. So heat track already flying.
The black text.
Now, what would you opt for here if you're in James's position for this placement? Do you snag that titanium plant spot?
Fair enough.
James kept 10 cards, so it feels like card draw isn't going to be that necessary, but he does go for the card draw, I guess.
Yeah, I think his thinking here is that maybe he's trying to set up a two gen or 3 gen planner. In which case, going for the cards is good. If the titanium is favorable if you have a way to immediately spend it. There's actually kind of a subtle reason why you maybe don't want to place onto the titanium, and that's that if you get mining area,
Yeah.
you can actually develop onto the titanium as long as you don't place directly onto it. So that card draw placement basically means he kept his hand size the same, which means that he can set up planner probably on Gen 3, would be my guess.
Yeah, he should be at 11 cards right now because he kept 10 and then he drew 1 because of his prelude.
Yeah, so like say Gen 2 you keep 3 and play 1, and then Gen 4 you keep 3 and then you can just claim planner. Which is, oh, he played Asteroid Mining Consortium on Gen 1. That is brutal. That is, yeah, that is nasty for Dalton. A Gen 1 AMC is one of the most devastating plays you can see. And he's going to get the extra. So, Asteroid Mining Consortium basically steals a titanium production from another player. And so,
That is crazy.
that card represents basically what is easily a 21-point swing, or $21 swing for the unlucky recipient of the titanium reduction. This is part of the reason why I don't like developing titanium early.
Right.
If I can help it. Because that is such a brutal play. I mean, that invalidated, half of Dalton's prelude that gave him early production. So brutal swing. He also gets an extra $1 of money production from it because it does have a Jovian tag. I think he's up to 3 Jovian tags of Saturn systems. So I would expect James to be going pretty heavy for Joves. And we see Dalton developing a default heating into building industries, so increasing his steel production. Also relevantly getting 3 building tags. So I think comfortably in the lead on builder right now. With the steel production and 3 tags to what appears to be 1, 0, and 0.
Yeah, it's a real tough break for Dalton having this come around to, he sees the oceans evaporate, or rather get filled up before his eyes, and then also losing that titanium too. Just a tough spot to be in, but James had no other target, so he just had to take it from somebody.
Yeah, it's such a good card for James. It's a victory point. It's Jovian. It basically represents $4 in production for him. He has to play it, but Dalton's been quite unfortunate with the way this Gen 1 has developed. That is for sure. I would expect Nick to tap out. I think it's Damon's turn currently.
Does that look like a research outpost?
Oh, yes.
Yeah.
It is. Super strong play. Research outpost.
Yeah.
Easily one of the best cards in the game. He even gets some value on the discount from Valley Trust. And so playing that early, developing it early.
Yeah.
Really, really good.
Place a city tile.
Let's see where he chooses to place it. It's going top left with it, which is very unusual. I'm guessing
really wants that two steel, but
yeah, I'm guessing he's choosing to do that because he wants to develop a mining area. I think that would be the only real reason, because the trickiness of that placement is that you really only have 2 plant spots to develop to claim points with the research outpost. Typically, you'll see your city placement go to the right next to that solitary ocean, or I guess to the east, or to the west right next to Noxious City. So not sure on the contents of his hand about why he chooses to place there, but I guess we'll find out.
Yeah, it's tough because even if you're going for mining, to develop a mining, it just feels like going down south in that southwestern area. With the 2, you could still pick up the two steel. You would still have the ability to expand,
Right. Yeah, I'm not
and then
sure.
you still have some potential to pick up maybe a stray greenery from Dalton if Dalton does a massive expansion from that spot.
Yeah. Alternatively, even going to where you can't place directly on the ocean because research output specifies you can't be next to a tile, but placing kind of diagonal left of that to be able to build into the ocean was potentially also a consideration. And Nick, I think, developed a power plant and then passed. And then James hard passed for the generation. Back to Dalton, he is
just selling for one.
Yeah, selling for one, so he's stalling.
I will play robotic.
Can almost see his hand. A robotic workforce. He's going to copy his corporation for 3 money production. Very strong. A lot of people forget you can do that. You can copy your corporation, you can copy your preludes as well.
Yeah.
Robotic workforce on dome farming is incredible value. Preludes are worth $21. So anytime you can just completely copy a prelude like with dome farming, it's just absurd value early.
I think we have to see a mining area from Damon right now with that 2 steel, but
No, bankers just straight money production.
And so it's also interesting to hear how much of a target do you think is going to be on Nick's back for having made a final table of Terraforming Mars, and the other 3 have not. They don't have that as on their resume, so to speak.
I mean, all things remaining equal, yeah, you'd expect Nick to probably be on the recipient of a lot of hate cards. I find in general, I tend to shy away from trying to play hate cards in 4 players simply because it tends to give a lot of value to the 2 players that aren't involved. It's a little kingmakery at times, but sometimes you just don't have a choice, like with James's AMC. So I do expect that he probably has a lot of eyes on him, but I would imagine these players are all strong enough that they'll probably evaluate the board position and most likely just target the winner or the person in the lead, because this is a winner-take-all format. There's no real consolation for second. You got to go swing for the fences. There's only one of these players that's going to advance to the finals.
That's true. We see with Damon's last turn, he paid an energy and got 3 heat, so he's moved up with his prelude, and now that play he has 5 heat production. Although the temperature track has risen fairly significantly, how much do you expect that heat to sort of make good over the course of the game, especially if there still are some big cards that people may want to throw down, like a Demos down or a giant ice asteroid or anything that just kind of shoots that temperature track up quickly?
Yeah, I would expect that Damon could finish this game with an excess of heat, especially because he doesn't have yet an apparent sink for his energy, which will also become heat if he doesn't find a way to sink it. If Damon does have a bumper, an oxygen bumper, then he's actually in a good position, I think, because he will be contesting a lot of pressure on the terraforming track. If he can develop that bumper, because he'll be pushing oxygen at least 1 every turn.
That's a tough call.
And bumping heat pretty much once every other turn, just with his production alone.
They can win more. He's fine. He'll just win them next year.
Now going into the draft.
Yeah, I believe Nick was just joking with James, saying, "Hey, do you want to just can we swap seats right now? Swap seats, swap corps, just swap everything? Would that be okay? You want to take that deal?"
Nick does love his Jovians. And James getting 3 down with typically speaking, the Jovians can be expensive to try to develop early. But one James has played has had, one coming from Corporation, one coming from Prelude, and one being one of the best turn 1 development plays. James has gotten 3 Jovian tags down without having to compromise his development very much, which is really quite nice for him.
And he's sitting now at 3 titanium production as well, which is in terms of the money game, especially if he's got some things that combo the Jovian and the space tag, which feels like that's the closest synergy out there for Jovian tags. You can fact check me on that, but I feel like there's a decent amount of Jovians that appear on space tags as well.
Yeah, almost all of them actually.
Yeah.
I think A and C is maybe the only one that doesn't have a space tag. I don't think I can think of another one.
I was trying to think of one as I was saying it, but I couldn't, so that's why I decided to turn to you.
I mean, I could be wrong too. I don't claim to have the deck perfectly memorized, but I don't think there's another Jovian tag that doesn't have a titanium cost associated with it, or a space tag.
I mean, that's one word because it's not really in his cards that he's checking.
So right now, I think in the early game, you're really going to be focused on trying to get milestones down, and James, I think, can contest Planner. Dalton, I think, can contest Gardener or Builder or both. And I don't see a clear milestone for Nick or Damon. If Dalton got Protected Valley, that would be insane for him.
Damon is also sitting on 3 builder tags as well, currently, because he gets one from his prelude, so he might have a chance on that. But Dalton just has that steel production, which is going to cascade.
Yeah, Dalton has more production. He has both in steel and in money production, and most importantly, he also has turn order priority on Damon. So Dalton, if he contested Builder, with Damon being to his left, should be a substantial favorite if that is the route he chooses to go. Because he's going to be able to develop the 7 building tags faster and claim a generation earlier for the next 3 turns, or for the next 3 gens, and you would expect Builder to be taken by Gen 4, or Gen 5, I guess, before it gets back to Damon. But yeah, if Damon got Protected Valley, which would give him both a building tag and a greenery, and a teleport out of kind of a not great spot on the map, that would be insane for him.
That also might indicate that's in his starting hand, or that he kept it because of that placement, right? That would be maybe the only reason if he's gearing up for the Protected Valley.
Well, that would actually make sense for Damon, yeah. I bet for Dalton, because Dalton already has greenery on the map.
Right.
But you're right. Placing next to an ocean, if you have a mangrove or Protected Valley, makes sense to try to claim access point. I'd still probably lean towards a traditional placement.
Yeah. Well, especially there's no way that ocean spot's going to stick around if it in time for a mangrove to be played as well. So you kind of have to really just rely on Protected Valley.
Yeah. Pretty much just Protected Valley. So Nick is starting player. I think they just completed the draft, or are they still making a decision on the draft?
I think they might still be making a decision of how many to keep. I see James cycling between two stacks of cards.
I thought I was. Nope, take your time.
Oh.
My bad. We'll pay public.
I was going to say, we're at least at the table right now.
James kind of encouraged to overkeep here a little bit. I think getting Planner is pretty important for him.
Yeah.
Because one of the things that Jovians does not do well is Jovians, at least on Tharsis, the map, the traditional Terraforming Mars map.
Yeah.
Yeah, does not contest milestones very well. Can maybe do something with Ganymede Colony and Mayor, but then Ganymede Colony doesn't really do anything until end game.
I mean, you have a kid, so I assume that.
So Planner is generally where you'd want to go for Jovian-based strategies. So if I were James, I'd probably keep 3 or 4 if there was even a slight chance I could use them if he already has 11 cards in his hand.
Yeah, and I think we heard that James is saying, yeah, I'm buying 4.
Yeah, makes sense. Makes sense. He's gonna have
15, I
probably,
think.
yeah, probably a pretty weak generation here, and then expect him to play like one card maybe this gen, and then develop planner the first position next gen.
Okay.
I am. My cards are not giving me income, so I'm gonna do the one thing that I see that gives me money. I'm gonna make sure that's right because it's real expensive. I'm gonna build a greenery. It's gonna cost me 23. $2 back.
So Nick is SPing a greenery.
Wow.
Is Nick already on the map? He's not. He can just go wherever. Oh, he's just gonna place it in the ocean spot.
Right.
It's basically a $17 greenery.
$6.
That's cool.
Yeah, he
kinda
said,
like it.
my cards are not giving me any income, so I'm going to do the only thing that gives me income and play greenery.
Yeah, $17 greenery is not a bad deal. I mean, Plantation's a good card. It's an $18 greenery with a stipulation associated with it.
Yeah. Unless you draw into it, but
Scoring, especially if you have the scoring cards that requires you completion, being able to place pavilions and not having to cash your deal is actually like a bit. It's not.
do you often think of the cost of cards as their printed cost or their printed cost plus 3?
Usually they're printed cost plus 3.
Yeah.
But obviously, in an ideal world, you get lots of AI Central restricted area where you're just drawing into them, and then you don't have to worry about it.
Yeah.
Or card discounts. That is the one notable thing. Besides Damon, we haven't seen any Gen 1, like a Gen 1 Earth Catapult.
Yeah.
So there's not a ton of discounts outside of the corporations.
Magic the Gathering rules. It's like you're responsible for your triggers, and so
That would push people even further down the path of wanting to go into engine. And actually, interestingly, Damon is probably, I think, out of these players, the best engine setup so far. With the research outpost, is the one who has, I think, the clearest terraforming path. Lots of heat production at a minimum. James going for, I think that card's called Lagrange Observatory.
Yeah.
It's just a science tag. It draws a card. Very good card for Vitor because you can just cycle through it and get the $3 back.
Yeah.
A little expensive for the other corporations. But if James has an excess of titanium and no clear titanium target, that is a good way to try to draw into something more immediately playable. And also relevantly, it doesn't compromise his ability to contest planner.
Yeah.
Because it's card count neutral.
Off the top.
Ooh.
Sick.
Off top, there you go.
Advanced Alloys is a sick one.
Put your stuff that you paid.
Advanced Alloys making all of his titanium and steel production $1 cheaper. I assume he must have drawn him into that because he would have probably sequenced it the other way
Yeah.
if he didn't just draw into it. So getting Advanced Alloy is probably one of the strongest cards in the game. 4 strong mineral production as a completely random draw. Very, very fortunate for him.
So three.
Now, I guess, do you think that this that play of Advanced Alloys, James doesn't have any more steel or titanium right now, so playing it right now kind of doesn't matter, and it gives him a little bit less flexibility on that planner for his next pull. It feels like a bit of an excitement play. He drew into it and said, "Oh, I know this card's good, and I'm going to lay it down right now."
Yeah, you're 100% right. There's actually not only is there no reason to play it early for planner, but there's also cards like the one Dalton just played Olympus Conference, where at this point the obvious one would be Mars University. There's actually cards that incentivize you to hold on to your science tags, and so playing Advanced Alloys potentially when you're actually ready to spend the titanium. Would also then trigger a card like Olympus Conference, like Mars University. So yeah, you're right. There's no reason to develop it right away, but you're excited.
And hey, it's a great card, and it makes for good TV. We're happy to see it, and I always love that's one of my favorite cards in the game is Advanced Alloys, just because it feels so good to have an already developed titanium engine and then just get so much more value out of it.
Yeah, Advanced Alloys is incredible.
That is 2 actions.
Very strong card. Speaking of strong cards, Dalton getting Natural Preserve, which is a card that tends to be underrated by newer players. It's actually a very efficient little package. Getting a tile on the map, getting money production, getting a point, getting a building, and a science tag. Science tag triggering off the Olympus conference you played.
Right.
Very efficient little bundle for $9 or $12, depending on how you want to think about it.
That'd be nice, though.
He also kind of sectioned off that entire West Noctis area, sort of for himself.
Yeah, it's a really nice board placement. And now putting some pressure on James if there's a mining area in either of their future.
Yeah, it also gives him the potential to develop greeneries into those plant placement bonuses, which lets you sort of snowball greeneries. It's like if you had 6 plants, you can like SP a greenery or plantation for a greenery and then immediately convert for a double greenery turn, which is relevant if he potentially wants to contest Gardener. Both of those, by the way, both of the cards Dalton just played are building tags, which will put him at 5.
Yeah.
Quite good building tags at that.
Dalton will also maybe want to see somebody fund Scientist or fund it himself. He's currently ahead in the Scientist game with 3 tags, but I think James has 2, and Damon has just 1 because the
Like pets for $10.
the event didn't
Get some pets in there.
obviously doesn't count.
Yeah, the only sort of tricky thing is when you have Vitor in the game, funding an award on Gen 1.
Right.
But actually normally funding an award costs $6 more, which is substantially more expensive.
Yeah.
But Dalton is in good position for Scientist.
Nick.
He's in pretty good position for Miner and Landlord as well. But I don't think anybody has a clear enough lead on any of the awards to justify funding them at any point in the next couple generations. Oh, okay, so
There we go.
As predicted, Damon does have a bumper. So he'll be pushing the terraforming track quite rapidly, which I like. My default in 4 or 5 player is to go terraforming. I think all things remaining equal. I mean, obviously it depends on the cards that you draw, the corporations that you get, but all things remaining equal, I think that terraforming is the most consistent and best strategy at higher player counts.
Yeah.
And his setup for it is quite good. The only thing that kind of works against Damon is that in a heavy terraforming focused game, milestones become even more important because those 5 points are more relevant when the scores tend to be lower. So not having a clear direction on a milestone is a risk for Damon.
Yeah.
But he's going to be pushing the TR track quite rapidly, which could put him in contention for Terraformer, I suppose. Terraformer is always kind of tricky to get, though. 35 TR is so much. I think it's the rarest of the 5 to actually get funded, generally speaking.
Yeah, I would say so as well. And do you find that differs in a 4-player versus a 2 or 3-player? That there's more opportunity for Terraformer in 2 to 3? Or
yeah, there definitely is.
Across the board?
No, there is for sure. So like corporations like Ecoline can contest Terraformer or UNMI, but UNMI is like corp.
Yeah.
UNMI very easily gets to Terraformer. I think actually, interestingly, in Prelude 2, they reduced Terraformer to 29 TR, which is a substantial reduction. And but in the base game, it's definitely the hardest award to fund.
That's something somebody would do.
Generally speaking.
Well, the good thing about
But it
Mars
could
is
happen
it's on
here.
right,
I
it's not like
mean,
they're face down, so.
I think planners locked down. I think that builders locked down. But Dalton doesn't have any plant production. He's the only one besides Nick with the greenery who also has no plant production. So
Yeah.
not exactly the easiest thing in the world for anyone to claim
These tags don't count.
that third milestone right now. So I think it's feasible that Damon could get Terraformer with his setup.
They're
I think cards like Bribe Committee
So here's fine.
make it substantially easier to get to that extra little push to get to your 35 TR.
And then he played
But you can just do it with regular plant and heat
he also played
production.
a heat production card. Yeah, here, show him the heat production card real quick.
The space one.
Yeah.
Yeah, he passed it to me.
Okay, so he would know anyway. Start player will pass because start a new generation.
Yeah, the player's just informing those who went to a bathroom break what happened. Nick knowing the card that Damon played because he passed it his way. And also the players helping Damon out, saying, hey, you can actually keep those events face down because their tags don't count, and we don't want you to get confused. Which is nice. It's nice to see. I think Dalton and Nick have a lot more experience at Terraforming Mars than Damon and James. I think that's been established over the game, but everybody sort of working together, and helping each other out.
So funny enough, I was prepping out for Arc Nova. I had to relearn the rules of Arc Nova. It had been a year since I played it.
Yeah.
So I had Matthias, who very generously was helping me relearn the rules and the strategy of the game at like 2 in the morning, and they had the Terraforming Mars sort of prep out at the table adjacent to me. So I couldn't remember who it was, but I know at least a couple of these players have had very little experience with this game. They asked for some general guidelines and kind of had all the cards fanned out so they could try to learn
Right.
sort of what the cards in the deck were. So yeah, obviously I think there's a pretty big experience discrepancy between these players, but I don't remember exactly, besides Nick obviously. Yeah, so you're saying Nick and Dalton have played more. I know that there are some relatively inexperienced players at this table, but that's to be expected when you're trying to learn 16 board games.
Yeah.
It's very hard to find the time to master all 16. So that sort of is just a product of the specific tournament format.
And it's gonna be a given too, right? And the benefit is that none of these players have won a Terraforming Mars ring. They none of them have dethroned Levi. And then none of them have to play against Levi at this game. So they're all good board gamers in their own right. It takes a lot to make it to a final table, and it's fun seeing how you sort of apply those planning skills that you have that you just get from board gaming to a different format.
Yeah, a lot of skills in board games tend to transcend into other games. Speaking of Matthias in the background there on Dalton's camera. Very awesome guy, very fun to play with.
I have no idea.
Adds a lot to the community. Really enjoy being able to hang out and play games with him.
Yeah, it's been great. He's been at the last 2 WSBGs, and I know he enjoys the event. And it's been great to have him available to commentate on some of the games too. And he just wanted to watch the Arc Nova. He was just excited.
Yeah, his enthusiasm for games is just oozes out. It's infectious and awesome.
And so I guess it's okay that Arc Nova's 3 on BGG and Terraforming's only 7. I think it's 7 currently. I guess we'll allow it. We'll allow it just this once.
So they are back into the drafting phase, going into Gen 3. Would expect James to just kick off the generation claiming planner. Dalton at this point, 5 building tags to 4, I believe. Yeah, 4 from Damon. Dalton should be a favorite to lock builder here, a pretty substantial favorite, but he needs to be careful about the cards he's passing, the tags he's passing, to make sure that he leaves himself with that sort of critical 7 building tag so that you can go 8 building tag claim as your first action in Gen 4. That he's not shorting himself on building tags, and more importantly, not passing them to Damon, because I do believe he is passing into Damon this gen. Yeah, he is. So he needs to be cognizant of the tags that he's passing.
13. I have like 6 or something, 7, something like that.
I think Nick was just asking James how many cards he has, and so James sitting at 13, which I thought his count was 14, but must have played an additional one that.
Damon.
Yeah, I think he lost one because he played the alloys.
In my hand?
Hand, not draft.
His money production's kind of tight. He only is going to have. Oh, it's at $31. That's not too bad. So $31. He's going to keep 3 here. That'll put him to 24. And I'll claim planner, and that'll be an additional 8. So he'll really only have $16 to play cards this gen that aren't space.
Yeah.
Space tags, which isn't ideal, but the setup looks pretty good overall. It's really unfortunate for James, I think, that Damon is pressuring the terraforming track as much as he is. Because I really, really love James's position in like a 9-gen or later game.
Yeah.
But I don't think he's going to get the time to do that. Get more time to develop. Get more time to draw into Jovian tags. I mean, every Jovian tag right now instantly represents 4 points without him playing any other cards.
Yeah.
Which is a lot. They're already kind of at rate of what you would want to spend for to spend money on points.
Right.
So James, I think, wants this game to go until the deck is recycled, which I don't think it's going to do.
Oftentimes, I always do as a bar for a 4-player game that it'll last 7 to 9 gens. Do you find that that's a reasonable average?
I don't claim to be a 4-player expert, really. I don't play that much 4-player, but that sounds about right.
Yeah.
I think in general, you expect a 2-player game to go somewhere like 10 to 11. I think it's probably the mode. And each player you add, I think, sort of subtracts a generation on average.
Right.
So that sounds about right.
Although your final in 2024 only went 6 gens, which blew my mind, and that was such a quick game.
Yeah, I tend to favor very aggressive terraforming. My games tend to be shorter, and also in that game specifically, Jonathan had also went pretty heavy into terraforming.
Yeah. Actually, I was also thinking so.
And specifically, he went terraforming into heat, and I was playing as eco lines. Obviously, I had a lot of plant production, and then I think one of the players developed a double oxygen bumper. So yeah, that game flew.
Ready? 2 for 6. 6 or 11 and 5 back. Keep 3 back.
Yeah, James keeps 3, surprising no one. But again, I hope that doesn't come to bite him in terms of keeping a suboptimal card, because he could have only kept 2, right? Keeping that advanced alloys in his hand would have made if the draft didn't work out in his favor and he didn't want to keep 3, he would have had a little bit more flexibility.
I think it's substantial. Like $2 matters. I mean, $3 you're just going to sell the card back. If you keep a blank piece of cardboard for an extra $2, I mean that matters. I mean these 4-player games are quite tight. So anytime you can find the opportunity to avoid spending money unnecessarily, it's a big deal.
Not to say that I have any cards.
But maybe he just got 3 good cards anyway.
Not to say that I have negative cards.
Damon asking, not to say that I have negative cards in my hand.
Yeah, if you read the
but
italic text, it's usually pretty clear.
So like
when do I have to implement it and when don't I?
In order to play the card? and then you must decrease.
The ones in production boxes is what I'm referring to.
And so Anthony explaining, I think, how
like
the
production
production
boxes
costs cards
again,
is
read the
34%.
bottom.
I wonder why he's asking that. I'm trying to think of what would prompt him to ask.
Ruling on it.
I guess for
Yeah, because I think it's in a production box. He's wondering, and that's
For that, if you want.
when it happens. It has to happen. I think that's always when it has to happen, is if it's in a production box, and usually when it's
yourself theoretically, but that
it's just with the plants when it's optional.
Has one.
Yeah, I assume he has a card like
Heat trappers.
something, or cloud seeding, but
Yeah.
I'm not sure.
Yeah, maybe heat trappers because nobody else has 2 heat production right now, and so he wants for some reason. But I don't know why he would want that additional energy because he seems pretty good on energy right now. Well, I guess to keep his bumper active if he needs to gain additional energy to play another something else like a city.
Oh, Damon is the one asking about.
Yeah, Damon was asking. Yeah.
Yeah, Damon would not want to play heat trappers right now. He
Yeah.
has to heat trap himself.
Yeah.
There's no reason he'd want to do that.
That must be it.
Oh, right, yeah.
I mean, it could also be energy tapping. He's the only one with
Mm.
Oh no, Nick has an energy production. Yeah, it has to be heat trappers.
Yeah.
And James running. I guess we're gonna find out because James runs out. What's the name of that card? The space event that gives 2 heat production for
Yeah.
titanium.
He doesn't claim planner though. I
thought
guess-
I thought he did. I guess he spent the money on something else. See, he definitely cycled out a gold for 2 copper as his first play. I just assumed that was him claiming planner. But you're right, it's not reflected on the board.
Yeah, it looks like he's looking for looking into his hand to play a second action. So he might have thought for it, then taken it back. Maybe took an analysis of the cards around the table and.
I mean, I guess technically he doesn't have to claim it right away.
Yeah.
It's very unlikely that he's not going to get the opportunity to claim before it gets back to him. But
Yeah.
Dalton finally getting a chance to develop that archaeology. It's not going to be good value.
Yeah. He's Dalton fortunate that no one else has placed additional oceans since that initial ocean blitz.
Yeah, Dalton is actually, I forgot that he had the archaeology.
Mm-hmm.
He is contesting Gardner quite well,
Mm-hmm.
provided his plants don't get blown up, because he got 2 from the placement on his natural preserve, 1 from the archaeology itself, and now all oceans are going to give him an additional 2. He can just standard project out an ocean for 4
Yeah.
whenever he feels like it.
So that's spend 4 energy and you get a TR and
Archaeology is
Yeah.
oxygen goes
really,
up.
really strong for pressuring cards.
Correct.
Just the ability to just get 4 plants out
Yeah.
of nowhere is
Oh yeah.
quite good. It's 4 plants that evade plant hate.
Yeah.
You don't have to float them, which is relevant.
And that's key too, because there's so many those larger cards like Giant Ice Asteroid, and Demos Down that people want to wait to get the most value of that negative effect. And if you're just sitting at 4 plant, you might sneak by somebody who's getting greedy.
Nick playing an Earth Office and passing. Nick is stalling.
Mm-hmm.
He might just be doing this. I mean, I don't know if there's a strategic reason he's doing this. Maybe he's just doing this as a baseline strategy.
Any Earth
I'm not really sure.
He played 1. I need that more.
This is kind of considered an online faux pas
It's whatever.
to 1 action. But in a tournament setting, you would expect people to do it because they're trying to eke out whatever advantage they can. James playing Research, which will put 2 more cards into his hand, which should put him back into final range if he wants to claim it.
Yep.
Barring him having access to any other better plays.
Yeah, I do like this flow from James. I like he knowing that he had the Research in his hand, wanting to get that flexibility out, and now seeing how many cards other people are playing as well too. He can gauge if he needs to spend that this gen, or can delay until the next gen.
Yeah, if you can avoid spending $8 on effectively nothing, and focus instead on trying to do something that boosts your development, that is, all things remaining equal, better. You do want to delay claiming your milestones, generally speaking, as long as it is safe to do so. The risk is that he is going to be going last in the next generation. So it is
We can be your friends.
realistic that he may end up getting undercut, even with no milestones claimed yet. So unless he has something clear to play, I would be incentivized to just get the planner out of the way and just begin sort of dumping my hand.
Yeah.
Restricted area.
Dalton going for restricted area.
Which gets me.
Relevantly not a building tag,
I will place this one.
but will allow him to gain a plant or 2 if that's what he wants. I would be incentivized to place this on probably one of the ocean adjacent double plant spots, which is what he does.
Yeah.
That makes sense because that will put him at 5 plants, which will let him play 1 ocean to not only get to 8 plants for a conversion, but then also claim a discount on it immediately, which is pretty powerful.
Thank you. And then second action, I will pay $2 to trigger restricted area for card draw. Okay. 2 actions.
Yeah, Dalton spending his last 2 to grab that extra card.
He is vulnerable though. He only has 5 building tags, and he's out of money. So unless he has the ability to convert, actually no, it doesn't even matter. Because at 5 and 6 are effectively the same number.
Yeah.
So if Damon, who's currently at 4 building tags, can play 3 building tags this gen, he can shut Dalton out of Builder. And with Dalton having what appears to be $23 effectively for building tags, it's actually possible Damon could get to 7 building tags. Dalton could start next gen at best with 6, but he would have to. There's no like double building tag cards in the game, and Dalton Damon is actually, this might be a real thing because he's playing mine.
Yeah.
You need the building tags to be cheap. So yeah, Dalton going for that restricted area. I mean, it's not the end of the world for Dalton if he doesn't get Builder, because I do think he is contesting Gardener pretty well. But
yeah, it would have been great for Dalton if he could have snagged 2 milestones. Like I thought he was pretty primed to get Builder and Gardener at this point, but Damon making a play.
Damon developing the Power Supply Consortium.
Yeah. I guess now we know what he was asking about. Nick being the only one to target.
Yeah, Nick shouldn't be too surprised by that, though. He had floated the power production from Gen 1. Generally speaking, if you can help it, you really shouldn't play power production unless you can immediately spend it in the same turn. For specifically this reason, Nick choosing to play power plant on Gen 1 technically gives him better heat production, sort of. It puts development center as an out, but the risk of exactly what happening is outweighs the benefit of getting an extra 1 heat production or whatever, in my opinion.
Yeah, and I think Nick had some clear plans for that that energy production now, having to reassess. I think Nick might have been hoping that since he was a bit slower and not in the lead currently, everybody else having developed.
20 for Earth Catapult.
Ooh.
Nick playing Earth Cat.
Also,
Nick also, by the way, kind of getting soft punished for one actioning there as well, because if he did have an outlet for that energy production, he used right away.
Yeah.
So Nick getting Earth Catapult down, one of the strongest cards.
Yeah.
Anybody should
Usually stronger at lower player counts, but will reduce the cost of all the cards he plays in the future by 2, and in addition to Earth Catapult.
No, we're the ones that are upset over it.
Particularly good for Nick, who's getting a discount both from Earth Office and from his corporation, Vitor.
Yeah.
So that Earth Cat cost him,
Yes, 8.
what, 23 minus 3 is 20
Yeah,
minus 3, so
17.
it only costs 17, yeah. And then choosing to develop the Colonizer Training Camp right away, which
So
he probably wouldn't normally want to do. Colonizer Training Camp just being, oh, there you go. There's another Jovian cat that doesn't have a space.
Yeah. Oh yeah,
space
there we
cost.
go.
But yeah, Colonizer Training Camp, usually you would only want to develop it early to contest Builder, provided you can play it before that 5% oxygen threshold. But Damon with the bumper, Dalton with the plant production that he has implicitly through Arctic Algae,
Yeah.
kind of pushing Nick to play Colonizer Training Camp earlier than he'd want to, because when he plays Colonizer Training Camp, James actually gains money production from his Saturn system ability.
Yeah.
So, yeah, Nick would have probably wanted to hold on to that, but the risk of the oxygen going to 6% or higher before he gets another turn is actually quite high.
Yeah.
So it makes sense that he'd play it.
Yeah, he jokingly said, "Well, all right, I guess I've got to make if I can't win, I guess I got to make you win, James," because he knew that he didn't want to push that James up when he could help it. But also, it's a 2-point card that with Vitor, he essentially gets for $3, and plus his Earth Catapult discount, right?
Yeah, Earth Catapult turns these cheap to mid cost cards into very potent threats.
Yeah.
The cheaper the card, the more relative value, getting a $2 discount at.
Yeah.
The cards like Colonizer Training can't feed into Earth Cat quite well.
And we saw James did claim that planner as well as his action. Nothing in his hand, making it worth waiting.
Yeah. Yeah, you see people oftentimes get too cute about trying to sandbag their milestone claims, and then if anything kind of goes, it's 90% of the time it's probably fine, but then that 10% of the time it hits, it's really, really bad, game-endingly bad. So usually it's best to just get it out of the way, unless you have a clear opportunity cost associated with claiming the milestone.
So Dalton doesn't play anything with his steel production. He doesn't have any 6-cost building tags as well that he wants to play. And it goes over to Damon, who plays the Corporate Stronghold, it looks like. That's also why he wanted to steal that energy production, needing that additional energy production so that he could keep his bumper activated, and drops that down.
This is really bad for Dalton. This is very bad for Dalton.
Yeah. Also having that building tag as well, putting James at 6.
Yeah, one more building tag. Damon is positioned to is positioned to be able to one action building tag, one action claim if Damon can get one more building tag down this gen. But it sounds like the gen's over, which is probably a big relief to Dalton. Because the difference between Damon having 6 and 7 building tags is the difference for the milestone. So Damon not having a 7th building tag, if that is what's happening here, very fortunate for Dalton. Damon, I actually think if he were to get like a Cupola City or some other cheap city building tag combination,
yeah,
could actually just be almost a runaway favorite, not just in the milestones, but also just to win the game. Because he would be able to claim Mayor before Dalton could claim either Builder or Gardener.
Nick, I think Damon might still have stuff to play because he did ask, has everybody passed? And they said no, and he said, okay, well, you guys go. I want to see. So I think he just might be delaying to see. We see Nick dropping down Media Group there with the Earth Catapult and the Earth Office discount for 1 coin, which is going to get him 3 coins back for every event.
Yeah, I was going to say, don't announce what card you're selling. Just say, I'm selling a card.
Selling a card.
Oh, he's selling the card and he's revealing what it is. James selling the card and revealing what it is, not necessary.
Yeah.
You can discard face down.
I think it's...
Can and should. So yeah, it does look like he overkept to try to claim Planner, so the cost of that advanced alloys play does manifest relevantly. So now back to Damon. So now Dalton is hoping that Damon plays anything except the building tag or nothing at all. Because if Damon gets that 7th building tag down, it's pretty bad news for Dalton.
Damon just sells 1 card as well, which is a bit surprising.
They're playing Fire on Dalton.
He does get $3 back for it.
Yeah. Not a huge fan of virus in multiplayer games, but in this case it's cost neutral, so I suppose it's fine. That's Dalton just been not having great luck
This
at
has been
all.
a really tough game for Dalton. It feels like everything's going his way.
Pretty heart-wrenching. Just so much that, nothing that he could realistically do to avoid some of these outcomes.
It's Moss, guys. It's Moss.
It's Moss, I'm pretty sure it's Moss.
James just saying he was discarding Moss once again, selling that for another $1. Yeah, that's tough. Nick did just say, like, for what it's worth, Dalton, if Damon had plants, I would have taken it from him. So I think Nick just needing the money more than knowing. He probably started with Media Group and Virus, knew that he could, and Earth Catapult, knew that it was essentially a free card for him down the line.
Yeah, that makes sense. I wouldn't keep Virus in a vacuum in a 4-player game, I don't think, but if he had that specific combination of cards, that actually does make sense. Spending $1 to hate a specific player is probably correct.
Yeah. Especially in these initial stages when Dalton's sitting on Arctic algae too, and it was in a pretty scary position to get Gardener and Builder, and now doesn't seem. Now I think Damon's in the scary position of Mayor and Builder.
Damon's in a great position, for sure. If Damon develops a building tag here, I think he's almost the runaway favorite to win.
It's been a long time debating between Metals and Business Corporation. Now I'm really, really, really happy that I landed on Business Corporation.
Incidentally enough, I actually think it would have benefited Damon for Dalton to keep those plans. So even though Nick is lamenting the inability to target Damon, I think Damon, ironically enough, would want Dalton being able to help him push the O2 track before these engines have an opportunity to go online. So Nick attacking Dalton actually does hurt Damon on a tempo level.
Yep.
I think.
Pass.
I also just overheard Nick saying that he was very happy that he ended up keeping Business Empire. The other prelude that he was deciding between was Metals, the metal company, I think.
Oh, he would have gotten hit by the AMC. Yeah, the metal company went over to Dalton. Would have been pretty clever if James intentionally passes Metals Company to try to use an AMC target in the game.
It makes complete sense. You know that's a new starting hand.
So go have fun.
Or no, doesn't the prelude draft happen before the card draft?
Yeah, I'll just do
I don't remember.
I think
The
it does.
WSBG format's unique.
Play the game
The way that the preload and card draft works and the corporation selection, I don't remember off the top of my head.
So get all the
You think I would?
get all the cards you want to sell.
But,
I believe it does. I think you draft the preludes first, and then you draft 5 cards clockwise, and then 5 cards counterclockwise, and then you choose the
a lot of moss.
A lot of moss.
you choose
So
the
cards here for
the combination of what you want. James discarding 3 moss for 3 money. Seems like he's got every card in his hand. It just happens to be moss.
Moss.
it's probably
Getting a mass converter down? Is that right? Is that a quantum extractor? I think it's a quantum extractor.
Yeah.
No, does he have 5 science?
You need 5 science tags. Oh, I guess it's a little harder to see, but right above his blue card there, it is space tag.
Oh,
tag
yeah,
has
you're right. Yeah, the range observatory he played.
All right.
Yeah.
Yeah, getting that mass converter is really good.
What else he's gonna play now? Production story.
Mass converter is one of the better science payoffs besides anti-grav.
8.
Yeah.
It's obviously the best.
30, and then still 30.
And at this point, James has a pretty commanding lead on scientists.
Yeah.
So maybe incentivize to fund scientists. You also want to be cognizant when you're funding these 4-player games about second place.
Mm-hmm.
It's not nearly as helpful to fund an award that gives the leader second place.
Yeah.
That 3-point delta is a pretty big deal. So, and Damon relevantly did not actually get that 7th building back down.
Yeah. So Dalton still has a chance, and Dalton now, because of that virus attack, doesn't need to prioritize playing a quick ocean and getting that plant, that forest out onto Mars, because he's been attacked. He doesn't have that flexibility. He's already been attacked, so
It's a red cube, but it blends.
I would expect Dalton to develop at least 1 building tag immediately as his first action, and then develop a second claim before Damon has the opportunity to take builder away from him.
Yeah. Add some opacity to them.
And it's Generation 4, so we passed to the
Yeah, really unfortunate for Damon. I think if Damon was able to get, especially a card like Cupola City, where he basically has 10 points over the non-milestone players, I think his chances of winning the game would have been very high, and he's also not reliant on the other players to close the game out for him, because he's pushing both the O2 and the heat track by himself.
yeah.
So he would have had a lot of agency to make sure those 10 points mattered. So it's fortunate for the rest of the table that Damon did not get that 7th building tag down.
Currently sitting on the points track, we have Dalton and James sitting at 22 TR, and it looks like Nick is up there with Damon at 25 TR.
Yeah, Nick probably has the highest score at the moment. With
I guess
combination points.
because of his huge asteroid at the beginning, giving him that 3, and then he's bumped it since.
Yeah, he also has a lot of points on cards. I think he definitely has the most. Damon actually sitting on negative points on cards from Corporate Stronghold, but Nick with at least, I think it's 4 from Colonizer Training Camp in Earthcat.
Yeah, I think that's it. I don't think he's only played that one virus event. So
yeah, he's probably the present point leader, I would say. Unfortunately, I don't think he has a means to contest a milestone, so he's going to have to make up the milestone deficit with points on cards, which he kind of does. So I'd say a relatively even game. I'd probably favor Dalton right now, if I had to say anybody, but I think it's quite even overall.
Mm-hmm.
Can I still collect my 1?
Yeah.
This production.
You should. Yeah, they have nothing there. You can prove it.
Damon forgetting to that he had a steel production, so grabs that steel production. Players saying, yeah, go
I
ahead.
want to make sure that one that's kind of hanging off to the side.
Yeah, players have been really cool overall about
Okay, that makes sense.
tracking to make sure that the game state is accurate, going back where, you know, the game state is still retrievable, allowing players to go back. This keeps the atmosphere very friendly, making sure that, you know, people are having a good time, even if you're playing for fairly high stakes, which this game is. People being very, I think the atmosphere at this tournament is very sportsmanlike and friendly.
So now sitting at Gen 4, certainly doesn't look like we'll be done by Gen 6. It doesn't look like we'll hit that speed.
No. Damon, the only player with a strong terraforming setup, or really any terraforming setup. James is going to have a delayed path to pushing the heat production with all of his excess mass converter energy. And Dalton has some oxygen pressure with Arctic algae, but with Damon being the only dedicated terraformer, I would expect this game probably ends around Gen 9, Gen 8 maybe.
Catching a little glimpse of Dalton's cards. He has the one that turns 8 heat into a terraforming rating. I think I saw some trees in there. I saw the one that drops an ocean and gives you 3 plant, 3 microbes, or 2 animals as an event.
Wow.
So not a lot of building tags I caught a glimpse of just there.
Yeah, that imported hydrogen, I think is the name of that card, where you get the plants and the ocean, is very strong with Arctic algae, because it's a 7 plant play out of nowhere.
Yeah,
it's basically a
everyone else good?
A very cheap way to convert. I think his plant count's actually 0 right now.
Yeah. I think he was sitting at 3, and then Nick needed the money, so.
I think he might have been at 5. So I think he got
right, from the placement.
Restricted area, yeah. That was just a full value virus.
Keep it in your Oof. How many you keep?
I kept the 1 card.
Oh wow, rough round.
Players not keeping many cards, 1 card, 1 card. I think no card from Dalton and Nick. Obviously not a very favorable draft for anyone. Nothing jumping out except maybe the first cards in James and Damon's hand.
Yeah, it makes sense though. Nick and James' hands are already so heavy. Even if the cards are medium, you're not incentivized to keep them. You just already have so many things you already want to play.
Yeah. Dalton just activates his restricted area, and that's it, and then passes.
Really, that's very risky, because he has not developed a 7th building tag. So if Damon has 2 building tags in his hand, he does win builder here.
Mm-hmm.
Damon is spending the farm on something.
Build a city and fund collect mayor.
Oh, he's building a city and hitting the mayor milestone.
Oh, he's just SPing the city?
Yeah.
I will get a pet.
Okay.
For the city,
That's fortunate for Dalton.
Really fortunate for Dalton. I feel like this also might be a slight misplay from Damon, because there's no competition right now for mayor. There's barely competition for the milestones going away, because it seems both Dalton and Damon are not pursuing the builder tag, and the only other person, I mean, Nick has 2 building tags, so that's not going to happen, and James has no building tags.
Yeah, it's hard to know without knowing the contents of their hands. I don't mind the SP City play going into next gen if he just starts the gen off with that, in absence of being able to find a city card. Obviously, it would be better for him if he could find like a Dome Crater or a Cupola.
Yeah.
Because he does actually have. Oh no, he doesn't have 1 extra energy spillover, but he does have the energy to play these cards if he finds them. He can miss his O2 bumper for a gen or whatever, that's fine. But they're just much more powerful than the standard projecting out the city. I'll say that it is still important for Damon to try to find. I mean, Damon and Dalton still need to worry about Builder though, because unless Dalton, for whatever reason, just chose not to play a 7th building tag, then Damon can probably assume Dalton just doesn't have any building tags.
Yeah.
And if that's the case, then Damon developing a 7th building tag this gen sets him up to play building tag claim as his first action next gen, because he is first player next gen.
The other card you cast I really wanted.
Yeah, I'll tap it.
Once I saw him.
But yeah, Dalton just
Put his cube on.
Dalton just taking the restricted area and passing kind of implies that he doesn't have.
Yeah, anything where he can be competitive.
Yeah, with Builder, which is really unfortunate for both of them.
And then like we'll go.
But that is what's happening here.
Yeah, so like that should
So a couple things happened. Nick played Sabotage again for free because of Earth Catapult and took away James's Titanium, which I think was a great target from Nick.
11.
Yeah,
Again,
basically $12 Sabo.
yeah, doesn't bully Dalton anymore. Equally assured destruction, and then James drops down a nice combo from that Quantum Extractor, drops down that Physics Complex, which is going to get him that 2 every turn.
Yeah, that's good for James too, because that excess energy production would kind of be a waste.
There.
Oh no. So Dalton just played Urbanized Area, which Damon's SP City play enabled. So Dalton now has 7 building tags, whereas before he couldn't actually develop it. So Damon getting like brutally punished. That's really, really rough.
Anyways, I should go for 20 for playing.
Because that not only does it sort of grief that city spot a little bit, but that might have just conceded over Mayor. It felt that Damon doesn't have another building play this turn.
Yeah.
Or sorry, ceded over Builder.
He does have 2 steel, and he's sitting on 5 money, so he's got 9, 10 to work with his discount.
Yeah, Dalton can definitely afford to play another building tag if he has one, but if he doesn't have one,
Board state thing. Apparently I didn't
all the
select
steel in the
energy
world
last
doesn't
turn,
matter.
but I don't make energy. Here, not that it helps
Certainly
at all.
a lot better to have money production than equivalent steel or titanium production. For that reason, money is just the flexibility of having real MC is very relevant. Change getting Physics Complex, by the way, is quite good for him because if he didn't have an alternative way to use all that excess power, he would presumably be kind of incentivized to push the heat track, which he doesn't want to do, because I think James wants the game to be slower. So having a way to convert 6 energy into something that doesn't actually push the TR track at all, quite good for him in terms of tempo.
I got worried for a second, like, what else is now?
I feel bad, I'm gonna double slam.
My first thought was obviously you don't feel that bad.
Nick was saying, I feel bad, Dalton, and Dalton got very worried, but Nick's saying, listen, I'm going to apologize, I'm going to pay 18, and I'm going to just play an ocean and give you some plants.
Yeah.
The Phoenix giveth, and the Phoenix taketh away.
I'm interested in seeing what Nick's hand content are.
Had I known
Because he's standard projecting a lot, but you're really incentivized to play cards when you're by tour with Earth Cat.
Yeah.
I mean, cards are intrinsically more
he would not
efficient than standard project, all things remaining equal, just by the nature of the way the game is formulated. But when you have an Earth Cat and your Vitor, that swings it even more in favor of the way of incentivizing taking cards. So honestly, I'd probably just float the money. Even if Nick's hand was just blank cardboard, I'd probably just float the money. Just hope to draw into something, rather than SP, to be honest.
Yeah, I think Nick. Well, I guess not. I was gonna say I think he was really depending upon that energy production to do things with his cards, but if he's got the money to spend on an ocean, he might as well spend that on the energy and then
SP power, yeah.
Yeah.
Or titanium.
Yeah, it's really unfortunate for Nick that he doesn't have a card draw engine.
Yeah.
His hand desperately craves. I mean, his setup desperately craves cards. And he just doesn't have a way, apparently, to get any. He really wants, like, a business network or an Inventors Guild or something. Or an AI Central, but anything's better than nothing at this point.
Yeah, we see Dalton just go for rad suits, gets a point and 1 money production. Dalton was only sitting at like 14 mega credits, I believe, with no titanium, so he was unable to do what he might have wanted to do, which was drop that imported hydrogen. Now that Nick gave him 2 plants, he could have dropped that down and yeah. But
yeah,
just
relevantly, rad suit's not a building tag. So Damon.
Before my pets are one of your whatever power.
Damon's still in position to claim builder.
What's the picture even?
I can't tell.
The physics complex? It's like a physics complex.
It's a physics complex. I was like, well, what's the resources thematically like? Are they just here? Do you want a cube of physics?
Science cubes.
So one of the cool
Like a
things
tesseract.
that
Okay, that I was gonna say like
I got to learn from Enoch, Frixless, hopefully I don't mispronounce that last name, was an explanation of how they did the card arts. So this game was made by, I mean, obviously it was made by Jacob primarily as the lead designer, but all of the brothers contributed. And he was explaining how they made a lot of the card art. Some of them are just stock, and some of them were photos that were made by his brother Isaac, I believe is his name. And there's a lot of cool little Easter eggs in some of the art. One of the ones that I only learned about this year, despite knowing Stephen Bonacore for at least a couple of years, is that the eccentric sponsor art is Stephen Bonacore, who you saw earlier in Frame. I love that like prelude picture with the cigar. It's so good.
Yeah.
It's like the kind of Elon Musk character. It's really funny. And there's actually a hidden base in the art of Corporate Stronghold in the water, and I've never noticed it before. But if you look carefully on like the left half of the Corporate Stronghold card, they hit a face in the art there.
Awesome.
Little tidbits that he shared.
I didn't know that one. That's cool.
No, I didn't either. I had to look for it. He said there's an Easter egg here somewhere, and he just showed me the art, and I was like, I can't see it. And he's like, okay. And he like pointed to it, and I was like, oh, now I can't unsee it.
So a couple things that have happened since Damon played that mining area and claimed that titanium beside the ocean, bringing Damon's building tag count to 7, I think.
Yep.
With him going first next turn, so prime to grab that second milestone now. Unless Dalton has 8 right now. I thought Dalton only had 7 as well.
So we
I think Dalton only has 6. Actually.
Oh yeah, Dalton only has 6.
Generation
Yeah.
5 then?
I think that's right.
Start marker. And you
Because
start producing.
yeah, I'm only seeing 6.
But an interesting, Damon had a choice between claiming the ocean area or claiming that other titanium area. He wouldn't get $2. He would get a plant though, and more importantly, he would block Nick, who ended up placing that forest. He hasn't put his cube on it, but I'm sure they'll figure that out in a second. From expanding into that area and getting that potential titanium value. Do you think that's a potential misplay, or do you think the value of the $2 is more significant?
I like prioritizing the rebate for yourself. I don't think the extra plant would have helped Damon in any clear way, and the $2 could easily make a difference, especially if you're spending money on milestones. So I liked it. I think it makes sense. So Nick developed the greenery that went into the titanium spot next to Noctis?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay. It's hard to tell there's a cube on there. I guess it's a yellow cube.
Yeah, I don't think he... Or maybe Nick didn't do it, because how would he have placed there? Because Nick's only yellow. So I just saw Nick placing it, but I think he might have been doing that for someone...
Right.
Someone else. So I guess we'll see. I missed who placed that down. I would assume maybe Dalton.
That would make sense. I don't think James had the means, especially to do it. But is there just no cube on there? I can't really.
I don't think there's a cube on there. I think that the cube was forgotten to be placed, but
right.
I'm sure that will be rectified soon.
Yeah, I mean, it would make sense for Dalton to have developed it.
Yeah, that I just saw Nick placing it, but I think Nick was just closer to the tiles, which makes sense why the cube isn't on it yet, because somebody else did the placement.
So Damon already has the mayor claim, so he's just getting builder, like almost assuredly.
Yeah.
And if you're in Damon's position, by the way, and you are ahead the full milestone over the other players, the only thing that should be going through your head is end the game. Yeah. He should be not spending anything on anything dirtily, no like livestocks, no engine, just pure beeline to end game.
Tis can happen sometimes.
And he has a reasonable setup to do it. I mean, he can just play a random building tag, claim. Actually, he doesn't even have to claim in the same turn. If he, because Dalton's 2 building tags away. But yeah, claim some building tag this turn and then just focus on terraforming.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, if he has enough money left to just do a standard project of a greenery, that would be a lovely setup for Damon as well, to get those 3 points out of it and do his back-to-back bumper greenery.
Yep. Yep, that oxygen incentive for the heat bump is a big one.
They can put the power back in the bottle.
So you could tap into it.
Yeah, I guess.
Yeah, in Damon's position, I would keep as few cards as possible.
That is energy tapping, yes.
Yeah, just take away from the other players.
Yep. Especially Jovians. You don't want Jovians flowing through James.
Yeah.
Just probably in the next best position at this point.
Yeah, it'll be very exciting to see how Damon starts this gen.
Are there any other cards that kill titanium?
Production? I don't think so.
James asking, are there any other cards that kill titanium?
That's the only one.
titanium production. Well, actually, no.
Yeah. No,
And
because
there are no more
It's
cards
just
that kill titanium or titanium production
Yeah.
than the ones that have already been played.
Steel.
Hired raiders can
Yeah.
attack steel, but not titanium.
You're safe.
James has a very powerful end game point threat kind of going on here between a combination of the physics complex and the implicit threat of the Jovian multipliers. James would presumably want to prevent as much terraforming as possible.
I think that also might benefit Damon a lot in the draft position, being opposite James, not being forced to hate draft the Jovians, necessarily hate draft the Jovians away from James, and hope that the other players are forced to do it depending upon what he passes their way.
Yeah, he's also kind of gotten a little bit lucky that Nick's early colonizer training camp plus corporation kind of incentivizes him to build his Jovians, maybe.
Mm-hmm.
I think in general, my preference on an engine-based game is to assemble kind of the more underrated combination of decomposers, ecological zone, advanced ecosystems, that like bio package.
Viral enhancers too.
Yeah, viral enhancers is a huge part of that one as well. It scores almost as well as Jovians do, but it also contests landlord.
Right.
And I mean, it's just such a powerful package. It doesn't have as much immediate transparency as the Jovian tags. The Jovian tags make it very clear that these cards are what you want.
Right.
So oftentimes, the players that are still learning the game don't recognize that synergy is there. But that like combination of 4 to 5 cards is, I think, preferable over Jovians if you have the opportunity to choose between the two in terms of trying to convert your cards into points.
I'm ready.
Yeah, in terms of pacing, I mean, it's easy to say, oh yes, the people who have the milestones feel like they're in the front foot position, but it certainly seems like Damon is in the lead, and then James has a lot of potential there. I would be still pretty scared of Nick's setup too with that Earth Catapult if he gets into some high point cards.
Next problem is that he doesn't have a lot of production.
Yeah.
Which is why I think he should have, unless he had some, like, this is why I would have preferred floating the money from his position.
Right.
If his hand wasn't very good last gen. But yeah, Nick has the threat potential to make up the point delta that he's going to need to make up for on Damon. Damon's going to have
3 for 9.
a lot of points, and is going to be presenting a clock for the engines to exceed his point tally.
Right.
And Nick could make up that deficit. The only problem is he's pretty poor. He really only has his starting 6 money production, no mineral production.
And he's been talking about that all game too. He's saying, well, listen, I've got nothing in my hand that will help me with that money production.
Yeah, that's just how the game is sometimes. Like, there is a lot of variance.
We haven't seen that much money production happening around the board in terms of played cards, I suppose. We've seen a bit from I guess Damon has gotten his a little from Corporate Stronghold. Dalton is pretty high up there in terms of the money production, but that was a nice combo of Chungching Mars, and then the robotics workforce was his big boost. James is still sitting just at that 4 money production from his Jovian tags, and that's it.
Damon double milestoning off this titanium mine. Titanium Mine, probably one of the better cards to be playing here, despite it being relatively late into the game. It is cheap, and Titanium does help pressure heat.
Yeah.
12 in.
Depending playing Release of Inert Gases, which, despite giving victory points from TR, does not actually work with the Vitor Corporation ability, but does work with the event discount and Earthcat. So, not great, not horrible.
Ends up spending 9 for it, getting 2 points, 2 income essentially.
That's about a fair rate. A little bit of production as well.
And we see from James, wow.
Yeah, James slamming anti-grav is really, really bad news for Dalton and Nick, because anti-gravity technology having 3 points, very cheap, gives the same Earthcat discount of $2 on all the cards played.
Yeah.
Is also a science tag, which is relevant for a scientist fund. James can fund scientists at this point pretty confident that he's not going to lose it. Dalton was kind of a threat before, but with James playing both mass converter and anti-grav and research, well, I say that as Dalton plays AI Central. Probably the only science card that could potentially threaten James's ability to play scientist.
Yeah.
Nick's position at this point is pretty unenviable, because he's kind of in a tough position where he's having to contest what is likely 2 superior engines, which means you want to go terraforming, but Damon has a better terraforming setup with a point advantage on base.
Mm-hmm.
So, very tricky position for Nick at this point. And yeah, Dalton getting AI Central, despite not having a milestone, gives him an out as well. But his position is also looking pretty dicey, because AI Central is a very powerful card, but it's significantly worse in 4-player than it is at 2 or 3.
Oh yeah, at 2-player, it's my favorite thing to see.
Yeah, 2-player is like almost oppressively strong.
I'd love to draw 20 cards. Thank you very much.
Yeah, that you don't have to pay for. It's a very, very strong card in 2 and 3-player, but does drop off in value at 4-player. Damon continuing to push the oxygen track. Doesn't seem to care about seeding over the O2 bump. Oh no, he's playing Mining Expedition as a follow-up, so he's getting the O2 bump.
Nice. Nice combo.
It is a nice combo, yeah. I think in Damon's position, even if he didn't have Mining Expedition, he probably shouldn't care. I mean, he definitely shouldn't care about another player claiming that bump, but obviously if you can claim it yourself relatively cheaply, even better.
Yeah, Damon's making some huge moves, but the science tags have come out so beautifully for James in the order that he wanted them. You know, getting to that 5, dropping down Quantum Extractor, having Physics Complex, which combos so well, and then, oh, look at that, I have 7 and now I have a discount and everything.
Yeah, and relevantly, anti-grav itself a science tag, which makes it hard to. It's very difficult to go from 4 science tags to 9, which is what you'd need to, without James playing any further science tags himself, with no research left in the deck. So the fact that anti-grav is the best science payoff and has a science tag itself tends to put you at a fairly insurmountable lead for scientists.
And perhaps that's why James kept so many cards at the beginning, saying, I'm going to keep 10 like an absolute pro. He saw the anti-grav in that opening and saw the pathway.
James's setup is about as good. I mean, the only thing he's lacking really is card draw.
Yeah.
But I mean, this is about as good as an engine can get. He just needs time. Damon, despite having a good terraforming setup, does not have that much heat, and Nick and Dalton have none. So the one, or well, I guess Nick has a single heat bump, but the one thing that James kind of has going for him in terms of tempo is that the heat track, despite it starting so explosively, it's probably going to lag. SPing asteroids is really expensive, and so usually your heat production, your energy production, is where you end up getting a lot of your mid-game heat from, and no one really has that except Damon.
Nick finally getting some money production.
4 cities, I think.
Yep, getting it
Zeppelins.
from Zeppelins. That'll push him up 4.
Getting back in that fight for Banker.
Pretty well discounted card as well. These are the types of things Nick needs to be doing. He needs to be finding cards that efficiently score him points to stay on parity with the players that are just, I mean, they kind of just have stronger cards than him. And there's, I mean, oftentimes there's just nothing you can really do about that, unfortunately. So it's an uphill battle, but this is the way you fight it.
We're over to James now. James sitting on 4 titanium, but had asked earlier, just getting extending that science lead. That's a gene repair, I think.
Oh, yeah, it is. Okay. Yeah, gene repair, one of the better science cards as well. I couldn't really tell. It looked like it was like I thought it was like snow or something. It looked like they were like in the ice caps or.
Well, they've repaired. They didn't tell you which genes they were repairing, so yeah.
Yeah,
The dandruff gene.
Couldn't really tell what that was. But yeah, gene repair, very powerful card. One of the more powerful science cards for sure.
It's wild to see James having so many science cards. Valley Trust over there is desperate for the discounts, but hasn't played a single science card. Oh, other than Research Station.
Yeah, Damon choosing, interestingly, to pivot from Valley Trust, which is traditionally more of an engine-based corporation, to a dedicated terraforming strategy, which is fine. It's good.
I do love just that extra third prelude card at the beginning of the game.
Yeah, if it wasn't for that third prelude, he couldn't get his O2 bumper online. So Valley Trust, despite the text of the corporation not being relevant, the persistent text of the corporation not being relevant, the third prelude was quite relevant this game, because if it were not for that bumper, this would be a long game. He is playing a science tech now. He's playing a slower wind power, which is a nice little cheap way to get energy on the board. Pretty much just pays for itself in the titanium rebate. You're paying 13, you're getting 2 off, that's 11, then you're getting 2 titanium back, that's 6, so you're basically spending $5 on an energy production.
He heard us talking about his no rebate off the science tags and decided
to
want the science tag. But he also got that additional one off from his research, so he essentially only cost him 2.
Oh, that's true. Yeah, I forgot he has a research outpost as well. So, yeah, nice little efficient way to get some extra energy production. That helps with that helps provide some delayed heat, which could be relevant. I mean, if you can save yourself a $14 standard product at the end of the game because you developed energy production earlier, that's a big deal.
I think I just heard Dalton saying that he's ready to claim Planner, everyone. So, telegraphing that he's got a mitt full of cards there now with his AI Central.
Yeah, the only unfortunate thing for Dalton is that his AI Central is not going to benefit from any non-corporation based rebates with both anti-grav and EarthCat out of the deck and Research Outpost. He's going to have to pay full value on the cost of the cards. Not a lot of money production. I got Methane from Titan.
So 16
from James.
10 plus a 2 discount.
Kind of not huge fan of this play. It is a Jovian so it's a Jovian tag, so it's possible that he has Jovians that he wants to multiply with this, but the only problem with this is that I think he wants to stall the game out, and so Terraform. I would, if in James's position, I would be incentivized to do as little terraforming as possible, even as Saturn systems, but just because you have the heat doesn't actually necessarily mean you need to spend it, though.
It's true.
It.
Just keep it and fun Thermalist and take your 5 points.
Yeah, no, that's actually a pretty solid line, because the oxygen track, the plant production from the methane is not going to accelerate the game, because I think this game is almost assuredly going to be gated by heat, which is usually the case. And so if he just banks the heat, he's probably not going to lose Thermalist. If Damon chooses to try to contest him on Thermalist and doesn't push heat himself, then James is just going to outscale.
Yeah.
So Damon has to spend his heat, and so just banking your heat, funding Thermalist, and just using the plant production for points actually does make sense. So now that I'm thinking about it, it actually play is pretty good, provided he doesn't
spend the heat.
Spend the heat, yeah. Yeah, I like it.
Dalton just playing Noctis farming. I think key there is for the 2 plants, so that, again, to do that imported hydrogen combo.
Yep, he has some money production too.
And now he's got his city is close to where he would drop that presumably 3rd forest, which the players haven't noticed yet, but I think we can safely assume that it was Dalton who played that. We just missed it.
I was gonna say that was not legal to play until
I've now done one thing to everybody where they were the only person I could do something to. I've hit the 5.
Damon immediately reducing James's plants, playing those small animals. Yeah.
And then I'll activate it.
Yeah, makes sense. You don't want to be crowded out on your oxygen when you have an oxygen bumper. Small animals is pretty clever way to make sure that you keep those TR points for yourself.
that was 2 pass card.
So it makes a lot of sense. Prior to James playing the methane, Damon actually didn't have a planting target for small animals, so a little bit fortunate for him, but
James does spend the heat, though.
yeah, I think
It's early enough that he could spend it and still accrue it a bunch more. But
yeah, I think it's such a big deal. There's actually a couple of the incidental heat bumps easily make a generation of difference. So, I mean, obviously it's hard to know without seeing the contents of the player's hands what their specific strategy is. But I think just based off of visibly what I could see, I'd probably just try to bank the heat to hard James and try to delay the tempo of the game, because Damon, who I think is probably your biggest threat as James, is the only other person who is significantly pushing the heat track.
I do know that James has sold a lot of cards, though, since his planner grab, and he hasn't been getting cards. Like, he doesn't have a way to get more cards back in, because he sold like 5 cards to get that quantum extractor out. Because I remember him selling the moss, and then another moss, and then 3 more moss. So from that 16 and playing it down, it could be that he's running low on cards as he fans his hand. He's looking He's still got about like 6, 7, 8, looks like, in his hand as he sorts through them on the camera. So perhaps that theory's not as sound.
Yeah, James lacking in card draw. The only real, I mean, if James had the AI Central that Dalton played,
Oh yeah.
then
I half expected to see it with all of those science and those beautiful combos.
yeah, that would be pretty devastating. That would be hard to beat even with really efficient terraforming. I mean, that's just so many points. So this is now going into Gen
6.
So this is where the game ends, right?
This is where the game ends. The players don't know it yet, but this is the last one.
Don't see it coming.
We're going to see a Demos down, another Demos down, and a giant ice asteroid.
Yeah, I mean, you joke, but now thinking back to it, we really haven't seen any of those big space events. So maybe the heat isn't going to lag as much as I had initially guessed, because you're right. There are still all of the major space-based heat cards left in the game. Big Asteroid, GIA, and Deimos. So, as well as Nuke Zone.
Right.
So the heat could actually fly faster than I was anticipating. Thinking back on it.
Nick shaking his head, not happy with that initial hand.
Yeah, Nick really needed that AI Central.
Yeah.
Nick needs to find a way to infiltrate Chongqing Mars headquarters and take their AI Central.
Yeah, that's the next Terraforming Mars expansion. Terraforming Mars infiltration.
Yeah, espionage.
Corporate secrets. Yeah, it's tough because Nick's production levels have not really moved at all in any capacity.
Yeah, I think it's fine with his heavy discounts though.
Right.
He just needs a way to, like, he just needs cards to play. And card draw tends to beget card draw. You know, once you get like even a single card draw online, you tend to draw into more card draw. So you start drawing business contacts, you start drawing research, and then you can continue to build from there. But if you just don't have that sort of initial enabler, you find yourself in this position where you just don't know what to do, unfortunately.
We saw Damon just asking our judge about the research coordinator, the wild tag. Damon asking for some clarification on that card.
Would that also trigger other things?
Yeah, it's not immediately intuitive how it works. It contests builder but doesn't contest scientist.
Yeah.
The specific wording is as long as you're taking an action,
yeah,
it can be treated as a tag if you're choosing, but is not a tag itself. So it works with Terraforming Ganymede, but does not work with Ganymede Colony.
Yeah.
Stuff like that. It's not immediately intuitive. It's a little confusing how that card can work sometimes.
Saw a little flash of Dalton's cards. I saw Cartel in there. So Dalton being not really having that many Earth tags though, but Dalton making up a play for that. Yeah.
That'd be a $5 cartel for Nick. $6 cartel actually.
Yeah.
Pretty much just immediately cast positive after one gem.
Yep.
With his
That
setup.
seems fair.
Yeah. I thought it when I released the secondary first, I don't listen to see right. Yeah.
So starting player is
Nick. week, I think, because we're 6. Because Damon started us off.
Right. Most of the players still making their drafting decisions.
Yeah.
Nick looking like he's doing some accounting to try to plan ahead. I love this. I think oftentimes when you go through the motions and you don't really plan to account for the cards you intend on keeping, you find yourself, $2 short of the plays, that gen that you wanted to make, and you can prevent that by doing exactly what Nick is doing, and taking it and mapping out what your turn is going to be and making sure that your keeps don't compromise your ability to develop the generation the way you want it to develop.
Yeah, I find that quite often when I'm playing online on BGA, I'm saying, I'll keep it. I'll figure out the math later. I'll see if works out. Should probably work out. But when you're playing in the physical realm, it's easier to kind of map it out.
Yeah, I do that too, to be honest. I'm kind of lazy when I'm playing online.
Because it goes so quick. I'm like, all right, this will probably work.
Yeah, it's some like random BGA game where there's nothing really at stake. You can get lazy, but in a game like this where, I mean, even 4th place is what, $1,000, where the minimum that you can win for winning this game is $1,000. Certainly taking some time to calculate is warranted.
Yeah, you're guaranteed $1,000, maybe $5,000, maybe $10,000, maybe $25,000.
Yeah, EV
worth doing some math.
EV for Nick's probably higher than that because he's just such a versatile gamer that I would expect him to be greater than 25% to win any randomly selected board game, even against the field of ring winners.
So 20 hours. To find the scientists.
Okay.
And James does fund scientist, which makes sense. Cleverly, in addition to probably having scientists pretty well secured, he's ceding over 2nd place to Dalton, who is still a threat in this game, but not nearly as big of a threat as Damon.
Yeah.
That would be the one problem with funding Thermalist, is that even if you funded Thermalist and banked it, Damon, even just with the 5 or 6 heat or whatever that he's producing at the final production, would probably be able to get 2nd place. So funding Scientist for James gives as little room to Damon as possible. I think makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, and great timing on that too. We're at Gen 6. The game will be over this gen, as we've established. So it's probably good to get that in now.
Yeah, and the other thing too is that if Dalton does become a threat, it's because the game went long.
Right.
And so James in that environment should be doing well anyway.
Yeah.
So from like a triage perspective, I think it further makes sense for him to fund scientists and fund scientists now before he has to spend extra on equipment fund.
$3 back.
I think with Tundra farming, strong play, good amount of points. He's getting a lot of points on cards.
Yeah.
Which is what he needs to be doing as Earthcat Vitor.
This game is close.
Not even close.
Tundra money?
Nick, a little understandably despondent about his prospects.
Yeah.
It's still early.
But good natured about it all the same. He understands that,
It's always early.
in a game with so many individually powerful cards that oftentimes you're just going to be at a disadvantage, and it's not for doing anything wrong. It's just sort of the nature of the game.
Yeah. Sometimes you draw into those perfect draws that you need, and sometimes you don't.
Dalton developing a development center on top of the AI Central.
Yeah. locking in that second place in Scientist, I feel.
Yeah, locking in Bridesmaid on that planner for sure. He's gonna have like 30 cards by the end of the game.
He's had 6 science symbols, so I mean it's too bad that research is already out, so there's not going to be a big swing for science. I like having that research in my hand and baiting someone else to fund science, but
yeah, that's an uncomfortable position for James. Dalton's going to be looking at more cards and is kind of far away at 3 tags. I think James has 9 currently with that gene repair. The anti-grav is 7
right.
or 8, I guess.
Yeah.
And so Dalton, 3 science tags without research in the deck is still a lot, but Dalton's looking at a lot of cards. He couldn't flip it.
Nick also passes on his turn. Nick's out for this gen, which doesn't feel great. We can see why he was saying maybe not even close.
Oh man, James with the dream. The CEO complex physics, or CEO's favorite project physics complex combo.
That's
not
just
an easy one to assemble, but very efficient. I mean,
that's a nice 2 points for max $4 to spend on it.
And Dalton currently in a Dalton's reaction to that play, very clippable, very thumbnail-worthy reaction from Dalton there.
Dalton making some big moves this gen, playing that investment. He's got so many cards. He's got many choices.
It's been a lot of card draw. It would be interesting to see what he chooses to develop with it. I think that entire bio package that I was referencing earlier is still online for anyone who can find it. It would be especially good for Nick because all those cards have points on them and tend to be relatively cheap. So it would be interesting to see if anybody can establish and get that online, because it would still be quite powerful. Especially for Dalton, because Dalton getting viral enhancers would help him pressure scientists as well.
Yeah, Damon feeling like he's in such a great spot, though, sitting at 32 on the TR track, plus that additional 10 points from the milestones. Although he does have negative points on his cards. If we look at the cards that James has played, has now 4 resources on Physics Complex, or 3, soon to be 4 if it's not. So potentially 10 points there just for James, and then picking up 2 and the 3 from the AI. So James potentially sitting on like 15 points as well from his cards. Nick's point engine having slowed down a little bit. I think only 6 points, if I'm remembering correctly. Maybe 8, but I think just 6. 2 from Earth, 2 from Tundra, 2 from the Jovian.
Yeah, James also has the implicit threat of playing Jovian for the most value right now with 4 tags visible.
Yeah. If he happens to draw, Ganymede, or if he's sitting on a Ganymede colony, terraforming Ganymede, water from Europa.
Yeah, all of those are still live. I haven't seen any players with them. And incidentally enough, David playing the livestock, which is the card I referenced earlier.
It is, yeah.
Yeah, I would like to see Damon just laser focused on trying to end the game. I think trying to develop more points on cards, especially with that synergy, I think might be getting a little too distracted.
Yeah, it's true. Livestock costs how much? 11? 12? 11?
Yeah.
Around there?
Reduces your plant production. I guess you had to have plant production somewhere. Oh, we got it from the magnetizer.
Yeah.
So actually, this was kind of a 2-card investment. Yeah, I would have, in Damon's position, probably just started standard projecting.
Yeah, because for the same cost, you can get 2 points anyway by placing it next to any of his cities.
Kind of a cool play from Damon's perspective with that. With that excess money would be for him to just standard project an asteroid to put the heat at -2 and threaten the other players to double SP asteroid if they don't.
I think it's a not close call.
For the ocean, and then if the other players just take the ocean for you, then great, they're terraforming on your behalf. If not, then that's also fine.
There's solace in that. I'll take solace.
Dalton choosing to target James with his loss of plant production over Nick. Nick saying, I certainly hope you would do so. Dalton saying, hey, I don't know, you targeted me earlier. Maybe I was going to come for you.
Yeah, I think all the ring winners are a little more rational with these types of decisions.
Yeah.
You don't see a lot of vindictive plays in the finals and semifinals game.
Sorry, am I allowed to take it back because I didn't pass the card?
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay. Sorry about that.
Oh, no, that's okay. As I said, I'd rather be the friendly table, but that has issues.
And yeah, Dalton echoing the same. Oh, sorry, Damon echoing the same sentiment. You know, just even in a high stakes match, keeping the environment very friendly and sportsmanlike.
Nick has it.
Definitely one of the consistent appeals of this event.
I'm glad you feel that way. I know that I feel like Dalton might have been referencing there were a couple calls at the Arc Nova table behind that you were at that a judge needed to get called over for. So it's nice to hear from someone who was at that table that feeling still, goes across.
Yeah, I would prefer more of an environment like this one.
I can see the jealousy in your face.
So, looks like most players are tapped for the gen.
Mm-hmm. We got another energy tapping?
Yeah, the actual energy tapping card. This one's going at James, I would assume.
Yeah.
Oh, but James actually, I was going to say, this is very annoying if you're James, and he was just still sitting on the 6 energy production.
Yeah.
But he actually played Tectonic Stress Power.
I think he knows at this point he's going to be the target.
Energy to
That was the
spare.
original purpose of the card.
So what would have been a potentially very annoying play for James, probably just fine.
Yeah, a really great defensive play. I think James said that was the original purpose of the card. He knew that he was a potential target. He wanted to make sure that physics complex stayed, and then it gives him that buffer room to build anything else that he needs with that energy. A really, really nice defensive play from James, anticipating that. Yeah, I don't know if Damon should have played it because it's -1.
I'm trying to keep it quick, but
but Damon needed it to get back to his 4 to keep activating his bumper. So.
Okay, yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, because he lost an energy production on the magnetizer.
Yeah. Which again, if he had done the normal, doesn't need to lose that point. It does standard production, still nets around the same amount of points. Although livestock, you will net a couple more points because it looks like this won't be finishing in Gen 7, looking like a Gen 8 finish at this point. I don't see it getting to Gen 9, but
he could also have. I mean, he has so much extra titanium. The livestock play, I think, is maybe to potentially set up like a large convoy, which would be a good way for him to sink all this extra titanium points, and that would make some sense.
Yeah.
It's hard to know without seeing the contents of his hand.
That's also what you have to do at the table of Terraforming Mars. You don't know what the other people are holding, and you can only sort of make your best interpretation based upon their actions, and then change your strategy or pivot based upon that. Like with James, you have to assume, having kept so many cards at the beginning, that James has at least one Jovian point multiplier.
Yeah, well, he also picks Saturn systems, which I think in this format you get a choice of. I mean, this is kind of embarrassing that I don't just remember this, but I
you do get a choice.
You have 3 corporations as an initial option.
Yeah, 2 from the base game and then 1 prelude. You're guaranteed to see one of them.
So certainly, if you pick Saturn over the other 2 corporations, it implies you probably have at least one Jovian multiplier. And Dalton does go for that algae imported hydrogen play.
Yeah. It's a bit of an interesting play. I'm not quite sure why he placed the ocean there. I would think he would want to place it in the middle.
Yeah, where you can get the rebate. I don't think he knows the rule. I forgot the rule about greenery placements having to be connected to existing greeneries.
I think he's being reminded of that right now, so
yeah, understandable.
He makes the shift.
$2, 2 hands back.
Yeah, that's the more optimal play for him. Is there benefit of him placing that ocean one more to the right?
Yes. The benefit would be that he could then continue to develop his natural preserve or restricted area for discounts, but I think it's a minor difference.
Yeah.
But I do think it's optimal. These little slip-ups too, understandable in games where you drew a game that maybe you're not super familiar with, and also this game is like first thing in the morning.
Oh yeah.
A lot of these players were up, past 2 a.m. and this game started at 9, which means you were probably awake at least an hour before that. So to be expected. You're not always going to see, laser focused gameplay.
That's the exciting part about this format for me is I know that all these players around the table are such good board gamers, right? It's unequivocal. If you make it to the semifinals, you are a good board gamer,
yeah.
Right? And so seeing these good board gamers outside of their element in this marathon setting, seeing the potential mistakes of not knowing the game as well or adapting to it. We saw last year in the Arc Nova semifinal, Yuka having only played it like twice, and then like being able to adapt and played against some players there. And so seeing the sort of swings that can happen, I think is really exciting. It's also really exciting in this game to see that sort of James and Damon have shown that they're but perhaps Dalton as well, just with that expansion, lack of knowledge or brain slip up there, may not know the game as well, but they're still able to sort of be thriving and are making exciting decisions.
Yeah, I don't think anybody at this table is making. I mean, the mistakes are also like relatively minor. These are the types of things that you clean up when you play the game 100 times or more.
Yeah.
These types of mistakes don't have a significant delta on your win rate. I think everybody here is playing very well.
Yeah.
Given even that I know for a fact that at least 2 of these players are, basically just complete newbies, or not complete newbies, but relative newbies, I would have a hard time saying that, pointing them out,
Yeah, for
sure.
sure.
Everyone's playing very well.
And the things that we're talking about, like you were saying, are just sort of slight optimizations.
Right.
And we're Gen 7, so we pass the line. Yep. Okay.
But Dalton wasting, or Damon wasting no time on that initial pick.
That was the I win card.
Yeah.
It's the promo card, the special promo card that you got at WSBG. People think it's casinos, but it's in fact the I win card.
And interestingly, the heat track is -2 from the ocean incentive, so expect for that to be taken relatively quickly.
Yeah, good positioning from James if he wants to push the tempo, which I don't know if James has a couple big cards in his hand with titanium that can shoot the heat track up. He'll jump up in points, and he's already made good points on physics complex.
Yeah, he's got 10 heat, so he would only really need a single heat bump.
What was the winning score?
To play in the ocean, but I think again he's kind of, even with the ocean incentive in front of him, sort of incentivized to slow the tempo a little bit, but it may not end up mattering if somehow, you know, oxygen does end up being the limiting factor, which it could be at this point.
Although we haven't seen the big Arctic algae making that good from Dalton, I feel like with no one having a significant plant production, it's Dalton to push up the track. Although if it goes 2 more gens, Damon's getting 2 of them, and then Dalton's getting 2 of them.
Yeah. I think in James's position, you still sort of expect, I don't know, the game. Like, I'm trying to think of whether or not James decides that the game's going to end this gen anyway, in which case you are incentivized to push the heat track. But you don't want to, if the game goes an extra generation, and you're the one sitting on like the physics complex, and you're the one sitting on, you know, 2 Jovian multipliers, but you can only play 1.
Right.
You certainly want to get that extra gen if you can help it. So you don't want to inadvertently trigger the end of the game now if you can prevent it. And so this is such an awkward spot, because I don't think it's apparent that the game is going to end this gen, and I don't think it's apparent that it's not going to end this gen. Because Nick is sitting on 8 heat, and we can't see Damon's heat, but at 6 heat production, it's a safe 6 heat production. It's a safe assumption that he probably is sitting on at least a single heat bump.
Yeah.
And then from there, you have all these players with so much titanium that a single, you know, Deimos down or GIA is suddenly pushing the heat track to max, and then you're like, you know, 1 mangrove and conversion away from the game just ending. So I would think the game is going to go an extra generation, but in James's position, the risk of facilitating an early end of the game when he has such a dominant engine, I think outweighs the benefit of claiming like an extra ocean or whatever. So I would probably not try to take advantage of the ocean incentive and just force Damon to try to end the game kind of on his own.
Yeah, I think it honestly all comes down to if somebody has that giant ice asteroid in their hand, because maybe if not, maybe the oceans are the block.
You don't see that very often, but there does need to be 3 more oceans. I mean, one's going to come down automatically, but you do need 3 more oceans to end the game. And oceans are not usually the limiting factor. I would say probably less than 3% of the time, but it does happen. And this is sort of the circumstance that it happens under, so it would not be that unusual if they end up being a mitigating factor for this game. And so James is
AI Central.
action 1 activating his physics complex, so if he's not going to push heat,
Yeah, he's stalling.
Yeah, I would say probably just not do it at all.
Yeah.
But I think James is holding on to his heat, which I think makes sense. Dalton's similarly content to let the engines go. Damon, I think, should probably just be windmill slamming. Actually, interestingly enough, Damon pushing up the heat and then offering it to Nick.
Microbe tags are out there. Any?
Microbe
tags.
Is also an option.
Ain't none.
But Damon's going to have to SP asteroids anyway to end the game most likely, so if that's the case, then Damon should
Glad
just
I didn't keep that
play in the
fancy.
ocean himself.
Feel glad as well.
Damon just asking, how many microbe tags are there on the board right now? And the answer is 0. Not quite sure why he's curious about that unless he's hoping to draw.
I think he's misunderstanding probably the Worms card.
Mm.
Because there's no card that interacts with your opponent's microbe tags.
Yeah.
Well, I guess there's ants, but I guess, yeah, it could be ants, but...
No, I think Nick said, I'm very glad I didn't keep ants. So, I think Nick got rid of it, unless Damon held on to it. But
Yeah, so...
the only
Yeah,
reason I
it's probably-
could think of is if he has advanced ecosystems and is trying to pick up some extra points and needs to know the probability of drawing microbes, like later.
Yeah, even Search for Life is out of...
Contention, yeah.
Yeah. It's no longer allowed to play by global parameters.
So 3 TRs.
1, 2.
He just double SP.
Yeah.
So I guess maybe he is just sitting on 6 heat. Which is fine. I mean, it's still standard projecting out. Double heat is
Yeah.
in Damon's interest. And I think this is kind of where Damon is being punished for the side quest a little bit, because it's possible he runs out of money just shy of being able to end this gen.
Right.
Yeah, I was gonna say pay your cost. Slide it off the board. Yep.
Yeah, it's also tricky too if you're Nick at this point. I mean, Nick Nick is disappointed. He was very much hoping he could get around to him. But also Nick needs the game to be extended as well, but he also needs to get points any way that he can.
That's true.
Yeah, Nick can't
That died.
terraform.
That died. There is no T-Mouse we can confirm.
I think. I mean, realistically speaking, if Nick doesn't have in hand a clear game plan at this point, I don't think it would be unfair to say that it's probably not a winnable position for him if he doesn't already know what he wants to do, because this game's only lasting one more gen. So he also invests a shipyard. So I mean, this seems like it's a Jovian pivot.
You get a
Yeah. I think maybe Nick has been forced to hate draft the Jovian multipliers away from James, and now says, okay, that's the way I can get the most points.
Unfortunately for him, it's kind of like drowning and trying to like struggle in quicksand, because all the Jovians he develops actually pushes James further into banker contention. So, yeah, I mean, Nick cognizant of the kind of position he's in, unfortunately, but taking it good-naturedly.
Yeah, James wanting to see if the game is over this generation and not wanting to commit too heavily if it's not.
I think if Damon doesn't have the heat, which is very likely, I mean, we can't see his board because it's cut off a little bit, but if Damon had access to 8 heat, he almost assuredly
would have used it. Yeah.
And I think if he had access to a space event, he almost assuredly would have used it, a space event that pushes heat.
Yeah.
So I think from James's perspective, I think he should conclude reasonably that Damon doesn't have the ability to end the game on the heat track this gen. And so I think with that information, honestly, I would probably just fund. The last fund is still available. He could fund Thermalist, not play any more heat, assume comfortably, which is actually
I think
what he
he
does.
exactly does it. Yeah.
Yeah, and it's a little annoying because you're giving probably your biggest threat in Damon sort of second place, but it prevents the other players from funding something that you're not in contention for. And I don't think you want to spend your 10 heat because you know Damon probably can't end the game. Nick can bump the heat track once. But if this game were, like, if there's a theoretical world where this game ends this gen, it's probably because Damon plays almost specifically towing a comet that develops oxygen and oceans and places an ocean on a plant, which gives more plants, and then it also gives plants.
Yeah.
So like it plays around towing a comet pretty well because that's how you would find the game ending this gen. And so I like James's fund here. I think it makes a lot of sense.
I'm gonna rebate $3. I'm just not gonna bother. That's cool.
Yep, get
$5 or 5 steel.
And it also disincentivizes Nick from spending his heat.
Yeah.
And so you're giving Nick away. And actually, thinking back on it, Damon probably still gets second place because of endgame production. But it's going to put Damon in an awkward position going into Gen 8 as to whether he wants to use his heat and then potentially seed over Thermalist to Nick.
Yeah.
Second place Thermalist to Nick. So it's actually got an added... it adds an extra layer of pressure to Damon.
6 times 4 should be 24.
He's going for a beam from a thorium asteroid.
Discount.
A lot of heat and energy production. It's Jovian tag as well, relevantly.
Yeah. Another Jovian pushing James closer to that banker.
Yeah, pushes banker. And obviously synergizes with the Jovian multipliers.
Yeah, and secures that Thermalist for James as well.
Oh yeah, he's just hammerlocked it. Especially knowing now that the game is going to go another gen, all of this excess energy production is going to be converted into heat as well. So he's pretty much untouchable on Thermalist. Dalton getting viral enhancers.
That's pretty important with the science tag too.
Yep, for sure. I was going to say the same thing. I think the way that Dalton's path to victory is also kind of rough at this point, despite all of his card draw. He doesn't have the production and discounts to really utilize it. But I think in the world where Dalton wins this game, it's going to be because of a scientist flip.
Yeah.
So viral enhancers being one of the components of that sort of bio-based Exodia. Actually, the strongest component in that bio-based Exodia and being a science tag is relevant. So that's a good pickup for him.
And he does have herbivores that he managed to get out as well, so if he's able to now chain those together. It's tough because he doesn't have any plant production right now, so it's kind of entirely dependent upon Arctic algae, and viral enhancers should do the work.
3 steel.
Drops Noctis City?
Yeah, James tapping out for the gen.
Gets me 2 plants.
Dalton playing Noctis City.
Now we see why he maybe wanted to put that ocean where he did that last time.
Yeah, that makes sense. But, I mean, he got the rebate back immediately as opposed to having to wait a gen by just developing a city spot anyway.
Oxygen at 1, TR for green.
TR for green.
And I'll take 2 plants.
Oh, okay, so he is also just sitting on 2 plants. They still haven't placed a tile on that granary. Hopefully they don't forget. Nick hopefully pointing out the reminder on that city.
But again, sort of understandable considering all these players probably are working on 4 hours of sleep.
No, that's fine.
I really like...
I'm going to play technology demonstration.
James's play of this game.
Yeah, James has been really methodical and hasn't wasted any actions, whereas Damon now playing technology demonstration. I guess he's got the titanium for it. It doesn't cost him. It costs him 1 titanium and $1.
I'd probably just overspend the titanium in his position, to be honest.
Yeah.
Oh wait, no, because he has research outpost. Yeah, I'd probably just
right.
$1.
Yeah.
But I'd be probably willing to spend 1 titanium for $2.
Yeah, Nick dropping those trees, developing some plants.
Sell patent for $1.
Nick definitely having sat on a lot of cards, and now they're coming out. Nick having a lot of money still as well, potentially sitting on a bunch of point cards to get that value back.
It makes sense why Nick had so many cards but seemingly no plays. Is he may have been limited in part because he wanted to save his event cards for his media group, but also he probably had a lot of cards that were gated by global parameters like trees.
Yeah.
And now that those global parameters have been breached, he can actually play them. That makes sense.
And so good news for an extended gen for Nick as well. Definitely needing the time to get these to go off, especially if he wants to develop that plant engine just slightly. Although he doesn't have a city on the board, so. And he's blocked, but he is blocked in. So in this instance, if Nick were to create a forest, can he place it anywhere since he cannot place it next to his forest, or can he not place it?
His only placement is in that ocean spot on the right. Yeah, when that happens, you can replace a greenery anywhere on the map as if it was your first greenery. Not an interaction that comes up often, but that is how that works.
I don't think I've ever seen it in any of my games.
Yeah, you see it a decent amount at 2-player in games with low heat, because plant production tends to be contested very heavily in 2-player. So if neither player has good heat production, you often see the board filling up in these like 12 gen, 13 gen games, and then you run into that interaction. But not often you see it in 4-player. And Dame's developing a mohole, which is pretty funny.
Wanting to try to steal Thermalist, I guess, but
I don't think he can steal Thermalist, but it will give him a comfortable second place over Nick. And this is interesting. So he's at 6 or 7 heat right now, because otherwise he would have spent his heat at the beginning of the gen, I think. So Mohole is now putting him at 10 heat production. He's going to have 10 plus 6 is 16.
Yeah.
So the Mohole does allow... Actually, now that Nick's spent his heat, this is actually kind of funny because I actually like this. Even it's basically like standard projecting out a heat for a little extra cost, but the fact that the Mohole is generating the heat production and final production means that he can actually spend his heat, can spend that extra spillover heat and not worry that Nick is going to snipe second place from him. So I actually think this is kind of funny, but I think it makes some sense. It's kind of an interesting, cool little play.
I think, we're going to see that the oceans are the last things to hit the board.
Yeah, oceans are expensive. Oceans are expensive to standard project out. Usually there's just so many cards like Lake Marineris or Permafrost Extraction that the oceans are contested very heavily in endgame when they aren't, if they aren't filled in the mid game, but if players don't draw the cards, they don't draw the cards, and in that circumstance, yeah, you get into sort of the rare circumstance where oceans are in fact the last parameter to be pushed.
Nick cycling. Oh yeah, no. Nick just cycling through his cards. I think I glimpsed Terraforming Ganymede in Nick's hand, so it's not in James's hand.
Nick still has a ton of money.
Yeah.
Like a ton. Yeah, that's definitely Terraforming Ganymede in there.
For Lake.
Oh, is he playing Lake Marineris?
No, I think he's just doing a standard project again.
Okay. Yeah, Lake Marineris is like one of the strongest plays as Vitor.
Yeah, because you get the 2 points from the card, and then you get two TR, presumably.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
A full value Lake Marineris is, I mean, just generally one of the stronger plays you can do in the game, but particularly good as Vitor. You get the rebate. You get the rebate from Earthcat.
Nick been sitting on greenhouses too. I think I saw in his hand. So with his renewed plant production.
Nick concluding, I think, reasonably that this game's going to go to 8 gens no matter what. So as long as he doesn't inadvertently trigger the end of the game, right now he should be trying to kind of prices right the terraforming track to get as much as he can without going over.
Although Dalton just plays, I didn't see what he played.
Yep, and 6 plants and $4. Yeah.
But it had to be.
Actions.
It had to be Lake Marineris.
Or the
or Ice Asteroid.
Ice Asteroid.
He's keeping his events like poking out there, and the last one's still imported hydrogen, so I mean there's no other card in the game that produces 2 oceans that's not a space event. It's Ice Asteroid, GIA, and Lake Marineris.
Yeah.
So. So presumably, oh, actually it's on to Damon here. Damon's heat bumper's tapped, his animals are tapped.
Yeah.
He's, I think, debating if he wants to SP an asteroid. I think you probably do.
Just sells for 1, delays the decision making. Yeah, it's a tougher spot for James right now, being a little further back on that TR track. Only 23 compared to Damon currently sitting at 38 on the TR, Nick at 35 on TR, and then Dalton also in the lower end at 27. James with
the birding.
So I'll get 1.
Yeah.
Alright, that was 2 actions. That's a card. 8 plants, greenery. Also, this time I'm gonna remember my herbivore. I'll place this here. Or plant. Yeah, just for plant. It's covered.
Yeah, Nick's double conversion, denying a point away from Dalton, who got his conversion at max out of 2.
Maybe that forest does have a yellow cube on it. I don't know how Nick would have been able to play that.
I think I forgot that.
Legally, but.
Well, he would have had the choice to do that because he can go anywhere, but he would have almost assuredly placed it at that triple ocean spot if he had the choice to do so. So yeah, maybe it's just the camera's just dead on to the cube that is just perfectly translucent.
20. It's supposed to cost me 20.
Invisicube.
Right. Yes, 22.
That's what the physics complex is producing. The Invisicubes.
Ah, the cloaking field. Yeah,
Yeah.
that makes sense. That makes sense.
Yeah.
Yeah, I forgot about that interaction.
It's giving you TR, please.
This is also maybe why Damon was asking about microbes.
Is there
Maybe misinterpreting this card.
microbes anywhere?
No. No. Yeah, since you don't have any. It's just,
We're only going your own
you
card.
just
Oh,
yeah,
I think
yeah,
maybe
That's why he
you're
was
worried
asking.
that you had to,
Yeah.
like,
Oh, no,
yeah, you're not obligated
you
on
it's
imported
only-
nitrogen
it's
to
only-
place
Yeah.
microbes onto your opponent's cards.
Yeah.
You can just choose not to do it. Yeah, okay, that makes sense.
Yeah, because he asks about the microbes again after playing it. And again, probably why he dropped down livestock, wanted to get a little bit extra value there with the making that a 3-point card.
Yeah, I would have favored just claiming it, the small animals as your nitrogen target.
Yeah.
But yeah, it makes sense if he was concerned that he was obligated to place the microbes on a different card, why he would be worried about potentially enabling his opponents. But in fact, you don't have to do that. You can just choose not to
I'll get $3 rebate.
not to place the microbes.
And I'll make 2 income reduction. Yep.
And Nick playing medical lab.
Yeah.
Not a massive medical lab, but will potentially help him get further ahead for banker. I think this is a medical lab for 2.
It was, yeah. It moves into a tie with Dalton right now for first banker.
Yeah, I think we've seen a lot of the swingier cards for banker already played now that medical lab. I mean, wombo combo you could do is medical lab with robotic workforce, but both of those are now out of the deck. Zeppelins is another big one that's out of the deck.
Dalton has Cartel in his hand.
Yeah, he has Cartel, but he doesn't really have the tags for it. Cartel would be quite a swing for Nick at this point. It's probably like satellites, toll station, and installation. Installation would be a hilarious play for James.
And I guess maybe Miranda Resort for Nick too, because I don't know if Miranda Resort has been played.
Oh, true. Yeah, Miranda Resort would be quite good, but I'd expect him to play it this gen to get the benefit from it. Yeah,
A different version of free than most of us.
No, I don't want to short myself.
because the money would actually be relevant.
Income?
39.
All right, but it looks like all players have passed. They're moving on to the income phase, and we're into Gen 8. And this assuredly will be the last gen, as there are only 3 steps of heat to move up, and Damon will be triggering 2 of them.
Yeah, I don't see it. Damon has no incentive to watch these engines,
Continue to make
Formula
more points.
1, point monsters. He's getting a 1.5 off livestock and small animals, but yeah, he doesn't have the card draw, nor does he have the passive point generation from plant production or cards like Physics Complex to stay in contention in this game. Ended now while his milestone lead is still relevant and his TR lead is still relevant. So let's see, just to do some like quick point inventory between Damon and James. So Damon is sitting on 39 plus 10. James has a milestone and 2 awards himself, though.
Well, that's true. The awards are going to be huge.
If you guys don't spend heat, someone's got to drop some cash. So.
But James has a big deficit to make up for on
that's right.
the
So,
TR
who's
track.
winning is
He has to make up 16 points.
Are not interested in ending the game.
Fair.
And the Physics Complex is probably like 10 of that.
That's right.
I figured that part out
And
as
some
well.
of these incidental
That's a
Jovian
good
points has, 2 on methane, 1 on beam, 1 on AMC.
Yeah.
That probably gets him close to there. So I think if James has, probably 2 good scoring cards this game, for this gen, I would expect him to win the game. And if not, I would expect Damon to win.
Yeah.
I don't think Damon's going to be able to make up a deficit of like 2 Jovian multipliers from James. Almost surely he can't. But absent that, I think Damon is probably the next most likely to win. And I think for Dalton to win would require kind of more of a combination of cards. I think Dalton has outs, I think. You can get a strong bio package going this gen. But I think it requires more specific cards and a more specific combination of cards that I think right now, I think it's most likely going to come down to Damon versus James.
Seems likely. Nick was just saying as well. Damon was looking at the heat production, and Nick saying, "Well, if neither of you spend your heat, somebody's going to have to fork up some money, and the person who's going to fork up the money is the person who should be in the lead, because if you're not in the lead, it certainly doesn't incentivize you to end the game."
Yeah, no reason to Kingmaker it. Damon is going to spend. Damon has at least 16 heat this gen now.
Yeah.
I think Damon should double spend his heat and then SPA an asteroid, regardless of what the other players do here. It's not getting any better for Damon.
And if you try to wait it out and force James to spend his heat, he won't, because the Jovians are sort of incentivized, I feel, by delaying. And so you're also not going to win that heat battle, because it doesn't incentivize James to ever spend that heat, because it's 5 points.
Yep, James has more heat now. He has more production in the future. There's nothing, you don't improve your situation.
All right.
And especially if you're in Damon's shoes, you're going to get 2 points anyway. So you might as well, for first to second place, you might as well get an additional 2 and make that heat disparity at least down to 1 point, and hopefully make up the points in another spot.
Yeah. One thing that works against Damon and James is that neither of them have any plant production. That one of the reasons why plant production is so good, that's often overlooked, is that final production. Plants often represent, like if you have good plant production, can represent 2 points or more in endgame scoring that has to be factored in. And fortunately for the other players at the table, neither James nor Damon has any plant production to capture the sort of implicit points that you get from final production.
Just untap your cards. Yeah.
Dalton quickly activates AI Central, wanting to make sure that you draw your cards first before you spend money, and then draw better cards that you could have spent your money on.
Yep, Dalton's probably going to have the most actions this gen. Just stall out.
Now, I know there's been 2 extra gens, but it also kind of boggles my mind at how many more cards have been played in this game of Terraforming Mars than your ring final for 2024. Feels like one player feels like Dalton's amount of cards that he has played might equal the entirety of all the cards played in your ring final.
Then I'll play my turn.
Yeah. When I play it as Ecoline, I really try to keep. I mean, Ecoline's such a poor corporation. You can't afford to keep a lot of speculative cards or marginal cards. When I try to play Ecoline, I try to play very laser focused. I think I played even fewer cards the year before. It's just the nature of playing 4-player games where there's 2 terraformers. You really have to make sure the cards you're playing are truly worth the cost, because $3 is a lot.
Yeah.
In short games with corporations that don't have a lot of money production.
I need to make some change here, otherwise it's gonna go. Okay, I'm gonna play Ganymede Colony.
Okay. Nick
18.
playing Ganymede Colony. Well, first of all, interestingly, Damon not double bumping the heat.
Yeah.
He probably should.
In case somebody
just
has
to
a
make sure
big
that-
space.
Yeah. But probably fine. But Nick just develops the Ganymede Colony right away. We know he has Terraforming Ganymede, so...
Or at least I
Nick-
think so, unless I was seeing
No,
that picture.
I saw it too.
Yeah.
I think you're almost assuredly right. And that is one of the reasons why
Yeah.
Damon may have wanted to just take the double heat bump when he could.
Yeah, for sure. James able to capitalize on that now. James super happy to see Damon not do that as his first action.
And you get 2.
Oh, he needs a second heat bump to follow it up to actually do the true punish, because otherwise Damon probably would have SP'd an asteroid anyway.
Yeah, I got the TR.
Tempest Pump.
Right. Because he just did that one.
Yeah. But yeah, I mean, Nick with Ganymede Colony and TG, the problem is he's not going to have enough money.
Like in a better position compared to you, but I don't know if you want me to convince him.
If Nick had a wife, a water import from Europa, or
Give me your opinion.
Here's how you feel.
I mean, I guess it would be too late for IO.
It's very right. He's got 50 points
but
very clearly, right? His cards. He's got
if
some
Nick
negatives,
had
he's got
like
score
a
on
third
milestone,
Jovian
so,
multiplier, I mean, almost specifically a water
His
import,
cards are a lot harder to count.
he would be
He's
in
got a bunch that are
contention.
worth
But the
1
problem
point.
is,
Yes,
even knowing he has TG, he doesn't have
He's
enough
got
money
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7.
to play it all.
15.
And that's kind of the risk with Jovians, is that they're so expensive.
And then I'm kind of the same as Dalton, but worse because I don't have cities. So the advantage.
And so I think
is
Nick
that
is
8 more points than him, right? So
pitching
if you put his in my
to
city
James
score, I
the
think
game
Dalton and I
state
are probably in the
for explaining why he
It's like
shouldn't
my
be
very
targeted
rough, quick-
with the asteroid.
Yeah. I think I really like how Nick framed it there. He said,
True.
"Listen,
Yeah. Well, so
like
Dalton's
I'm
pretty
happy to give you my
right?
opinion.
And
If
so,
you want, you
know,
want it.
second
But like, if you don't want my opinion, I won't say anything." And James was like, "Oh, I'd love to hear your opinion."
I'm not
Second
doing
list
anything in
analyst is over
thermals.
here. So
Yeah, and Nick is, I mean,
It's close.
I obviously think it's between
full
the two.
disclosure, if I were in
I'm
Nick's
predicting-
position, I would
I
probably
guess I'm just
spin
worried,
the game condition
like a lot of points.
as much as possible to not, I would never say, yeah, I'm winning, you just hit me. Like,
Yeah,
I would
I saw
probably-
your brass semifinal game in the first
That's what
in the
that's
first
what
year.
I'm
You're like,
saying.
"Oh no, Cotton? Who cares about Cotton?"
I would probably, I mean, no matter what, would somehow find a way to make it sound like my opponents are winning. But Nick's argument here is, I actually think, correct and
Yeah.
valid. I don't
Yeah.
think you should be hitting Nick.
You and I are similar board game players. I feel, Levi. I sense a kindred spirit. I see myself.
I think the table talk of board games
There's
is
a card that gets
one of the more fun elements, as
Yeah.
long as you're not oppressive or pushy.
Agreed.
It's fun until it's not kind of deal.
Yeah.
But I think giving people the opportunity to pitch a case, even if they might be spinning things a little bit, or even just straight up lying, as long as they're not hoarding up a bunch of space or being
Yeah.
very oppressive about it, I think is one of the more fun and dynamic parts of playing a board game where you're actually with people.
Agreed.
You know, not just playing on BGA, you
You also
know.
don't
Yeah.
have to hit anyone. You actually could just say, I hit
you
zero.
are allowed
But I think what Nick is doing, where
that,
he's
but
giving
I'm
like,
just-
a, you know, here's my case, I'm gonna spit it out in 30
saying,
seconds,
could
and you make your
not choose.
decision, and I'll respect
Yeah.
that decision. That's exactly the sort of sweet spot of where you want to be.
Yeah.
You know, 3 of us, although I guess the 2 of us are.
Man, I'm flipping something.
It's close. It's really
Yeah. Nick also saying, remember, you
Wherever the
don't
shovel
have to.
goes.
You also don't have to target anybody. I don't think that's the right decision, but there's a
Yeah, I don't think there's
possibility.
any reason to
Sorry,
I
what
don't
do
know.
you
I don't know what you're doing, but
Just like
not target somebody.
I think that's a huge.
If the O2 track wasn't maxed out and James wanted to end the game earlier, it's potentially a valid argument to let your opponent convert to help you end the game together.
Yeah.
That would be a valid argument, but that's not liking.
Yeah, James ends up flipping a coin, flipping a mining thing, and he decides to take away from Nick, which Nick says, I think that's a bad decision. I also feel like that's a bad decision with the current game state. but James perhaps scared of any additional Jovians that are going to be coming from Vitor's significant piggy bank.
I see we have one temperature level in the game. So it looks like we're going to end the game.
Yeah, the thing though is that Nick can't play 2.
That might be a possible adjudication if
Yeah.
you do not, pick up pace just a little bit. Okay.
So where did the extra heat bump come from? So
I've been trying to play fast.
so what happened with the heat track this gen? I think there were 3 off at the start of the gen, and James played an asteroid that's 1. So has nobody bumped heat yet?
I think Damon bumped it once and opted not to do the second one, maybe
Gotcha.
wanting to keep his heat in case to tempt James into doing a double bump and to try to steal Thermalist from James.
Oh yeah, he would never do it.
Yeah.
Maybe he's worried that like if
Demon trigger.
his mohole alone isn't going to prevent Nick from taking it from him, but
Demon triggers, yeah.
I wouldn't be that worried about it.
We'll be fine.
I think he also might have been just doing the single bump to see what other people do, to see if it's going to last, to see if he had to spend that SP. But
We're selling this card.
Oh, actually, interestingly, something I forgot about Damon's heat production is he actually has 8 heat production this gen, not just or 8 extra, because he got the 4 from the mohole he played, but he's also getting 4 from his O2 bumper, which is no longer active.
right.
So he actually had more heat than I thought. So yeah, I think from that position he should have felt comfortable just taking the double bump. And Dalton actually is the one who triggered endgame here. So kind of punishing Damon a little bit, and I think.
Oh no, I thought Damon. I think it just went around really quickly. I think Damon did spend the last 8 heat while we were chatting. I feel very confident about that. Yeah.
Gotcha.
The players, I think, were just told that it was 12:30, and so they want to make sure that they're on time and pace. So they've sped up their turns a little bit, but they'll be finished before the time limit.
Right.
As WSBG only has the space for a certain amount of time, so the games can't last more than 4 hours.
Yeah, certainly our Arc Nova game pushed that.
Yeah.
10 for Mangrove.
And Nick has a Mangrove.
That's $3.
Is a pretty strong, efficient scoring package. No other real synergy with it, but it's 2 points for what is essentially 11 minus like $8, and he's going to be able to get a placement bonus as well. So
Yeah.
that's a
And-
little efficiency.
A safe spot too, just because of Dalton's restricted area and Damon's city. No one was really going to drop a city in that corner for 1 anyway.
Yeah.
But he's not going to accidentally add to somebody's.
2 assault card.
Right. Fortunately for Nick, as it stands now, the asteroid is not going to actually compromise his ability to get an extra conversion off. So that asteroid's probably not actually going to matter.
Just for him.
Yeah.
30. He's gonna get.
In my game in the finals of the first WSBG, Anthony losing his final conversion to a virus
Mm-hmm. Made the difference.
cost him the game, yeah. But I don't think that's going to be the case here. But yeah, I'll be the one to admit, it's Anthony very easily could have won that game were it not for that.
And we see Nick did drop that Terraforming Ganymede that we spied in his hand, shooting him up to 39 TR with, he's not, currently he's tied for Banker, but I don't see him keeping Banker based around the amount of cards in Dalton's hand.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And the problem is he's missing the milestone. He's missing the. He's got an okay number of points on cards. He probably has the most actually, besides maybe James's physics complex that's been churning for a while. But yeah, I think it's gonna be pretty tricky for him to make up the deficit from just not having the milestone in a war point.
That is the correct
Sounds
name
so
of the card.
confident.
It's just $6 for you for cards.
Damon drops the SF Memorial, now just going for whatever cheap points you can get. Grab a point there and a card. Maybe he'll top deck into something tasty.
Yep.
Speaking of circles.
Oh, right. Nick has greenhouses.
Yeah.
So
5, 6. I'm gonna spend 2 more.
So 6 to a total of 10.
Mm-hmm.
You're going to convert for an extra 2.
And wisely covers that spot.
2 goes down to 4.
And I'm
So
going to
again, he's still 1 short. Oh no, there's 1 short.
No, he's got 4 and he'll be producing 4, so he'll be able to get an additional plant.
Yeah.
Ooh, that's a big card though from James. A nice 4-point
12 here, and then 8.
grab.
Yep. Yes.
Cool.
Yep.
Yeah, significantly discounted. I wonder if he included the discount from his quantum. It's kind of buried in there. I don't think he pointed to it explicitly. I didn't actually look at that map as he was doing it, but it's an easy one to forget. I know that they're kind of rushing him along, but one of the things that I did starting this year is any of the cards that could trigger cost reductions, like Quantum Extractor, I actually put at the top of my white player board.
Right.
And everything else separate.
Nice.
As a way to remind myself in circumstances, because it's so
I'm
easy
going to pay.
forget.
Yeah.
Yep.
Oh, this is also nice for James, and really nice for the banker.
Decrease energy production.
Yep. Yeah, this is going to be 2 points plus $4 extra on.
We'll
banker.
put him into the lead for banker, and Nick's already passed, so that's like a guaranteed second place for banker for James, if nothing else changes.
Yeah, James getting a huge number of points on the awards now.
And then place this one.
Yes.
Yeah, he'll get a slight rebate as well. The optimal place obviously being just south of those 2 cities, because at this point it doesn't feel like there's going to be any more cities that will be placed, and if they are, well, it'll be placed in the southwest.
Yep. Yep, makes sense. Might as well claim the $2.
I'm still going back to Damon's first city placement. I guess it hasn't really mattered where it went, but it just that feels like a strange city placement, potentially showing.
It gets a point per.
Yeah, that's probably just a little bit of an experience.
Yeah.
Which is fine. I think Damon's played overall quite well. Interestingly, going for the $4. So
Wow.
choosing that he needs the $2 to play something in his hand.
Yeah.
That's worth at least 1 point.
Cards, do you have them?
Which all goes back to that advanced alloys play. That additional $2
Yeah.
could have given you a point right here.
Yeah. The benefit of clean play is significant.
I will sell a card for
I think we'll be seeing a lot of that from Dalton, selling a card for $1 until everybody else has passed.
Yeah, I mean, he's choosing that he wants to exercise his right to go last, which is fine. Kind of makes the last gen a little bit of a slog, but he's within his right to do that.
I remember hot off the 2022 final where our judge, Anthony Sacenti, also had a mitt full of cards and sort of delayed. And then me playing a game of Terraforming Mars right afterwards, and my friends telling me, no, we house rule that you can, when you sell patents, you got to just sell them all at once because we don't want the game to go so long. I was like, no, I learned this from the World Series of Board Gaming, and by golly, I'm gonna do it.
Yeah, it's kind of like an implied contract online too among like the top level Terraforming Mars players is that you 2-action unless you have an explicit reason not to, which is like you want to make an ocean and then a conversion right away.
Yeah.
But it's kind of considered cheesy to try to take advantage of other players 2-actioning by 1-actioning yourself. But in this circumstance where you're really playing to try to win, it makes sense. And one of the advantages of having an engine is your opportunity to go last in the final gen if you want to exercise it. And so Dalton should be doing this in this game, but yeah, it's not something I would do in a casual game.
I'll put this here.
Are seeing a city.
A strange placement. Yeah, strange placement from Damon. I guess wanting to create greenery and get 2 points from it instead of 1, and maybe needing the plants as well, because James had been toying with needing those 2 plants to create the greenery.
Yeah, now that commercial district placement looking really juicy if it had gone on the elbow, but there's no way he could have anticipated that.
I'm definitely going to make use of that.
I'm going to play farming for 14, so that's 10.
Yeah, potentially a decent misplay from James, but he wants to play farming and he gets 2 points out of it, so he needed the $4.
Yep.
I guess not having any cards to sell in his hand.
Yep, I mean that makes sense. He had a choice between what he thought would be 1 point and 2 points.
Yeah.
And even now, it's still even better.
It's the same.
Even if it was 2 points versus 2 points, this produces more money production and for Banker. So it would still be optimal. So
ultimately the right play, regardless.
Yeah.
Then I'll go ahead and play 8 for that. -2. Back.
Wave powers into shuttles.
Phone's going off.
Technically speaking, he could have floated the energy because both energy hate cards are out of the deck, but
I'm gonna get
doubt it really
down.
matters.
Go 2 up there.
But if he wanted to keep 1 action, he could have.
That's back. That's paid. It's 2 actions.
Yeah, we see Dalton gaining on James, needing to take that banker away from James, and I think with the amount of money left in Dalton's stack, he's definitely going to do it. James, very tapped out. It has already passed.
Yeah, so James is at what? So he's a 17 money production to Dalton's sitting at 16.
16.
Yeah, safe assumption that Dalton can take it. Actually, Dalton could at least tie it just with an SP City. But
really surprising that James never got those. Had a Jovian scoring tag. Had a Jovian multiplier.
Oh yeah, he's just out of money. Yeah, that's interesting.
Probably a couple dollars.
I guess Nick took them all. Nick gobbled them all up in the draft and then did that pivot.
Yeah, James still found a way to score pretty efficiently anyway, though, with the ICS. But certainly, I think if he had been able to play like ICS plus a Jovian multiplier, he probably would have shut out the game. Now it's not so clear.
Yeah.
Because he's sitting on 24 points. But he's doing so well on the awards. I don't know. I think it's going to be close. Unless I'm missing something.
Yeah, also interesting too, with James not placing that commercial district there, he opens the door for Damon to score another 2 points. And Damon doesn't mind giving Dalton points at this point. Dalton not on the milestones or the awards board, although Dalton will be coming in second for science.
Yeah, that does represent a 3-point delta at this point. But again, that would have difficult to anticipate. And Media Archives is certainly a justifiable reason to stall.
Yeah.
You want to trigger that as late as possible. Actually, funny enough, Dalton has a development center, but does not appear that he could use it this gen.
Yeah.
Because he burned his energy production on something else. So that's kind of funny. I just now noticed that. Because I remember him playing the AI Central, and it's like he never drew off his dev center, and he didn't draw off it because he didn't have the energy production to do it.
Yeah.
Unfortunately.
Damon trying to figure out if there's anything else that he can do to eke out a couple more points. I mean, I really like his city and forest placements there at the end for Damon, getting a lot of value out of those.
And Damon's sitting on $15.
Yeah.
And he has an unknown in his hand. Which can't be that relevant, because if it was a relevant card, you just play it.
Yeah.
Yeah. So if you're just sitting on $15 and there's nothing else to do, then yeah, unfortunately, there's no way to score points. You need at least 23.
Yeah.
I don't actually remember what that one was.
It's at 1.
It's at 1.
Damon cleaning the board and giving himself a steel production in the process. Luckily, there's no miner funded, so it doesn't really matter that being bumped at this point.
Yeah, I mean,
It doesn't seem like
there's a say or do at this point for him.
Yeah. But also, too, you're tired at the end of the game. You want to make sure that you
don't
don't
want to
pass.
miss anything.
Don't want to miss anything, especially if you're new to the game as well.
Yep, agreed. Even if you're not new to the game.
Yeah.
I missed a GHG activation on the final table.
Oh, he's deciding if he hits insulation.
Oh, he has insulation.
His insulation deciding how much
to do it for.
heat to go. So he is going to get that 4 heat, so he's okay because Nick, because he'll get the 4 heat from his energy conversion. And he moves up into second place in the banker. Or first place in banker right now. That's a huge swing, a very important thing.
And then Dalton immediately answers with the toll station.
Yeah.
Yeah, those were like the kind of haymakers for banker.
Your opponents have?
Yeah, Dalton had that locked and loaded. Again, a good reason to delay, to make sure that nobody can snipe you while you're past.
You just have play as many space tags as possible.
2, 3.
So 3, 4, 5, 6, 7.
7, so 7 puts me at 23.
Dalton jumps up to 23, making sure Damon can't take that banker. You can see the disappointment on Damon's face. Was hoping that would make good.
Yeah, but James didn't score as many points this gen as he maybe could have.
Yeah.
So Damon can't be too disappointed with the way this gen has developed.
Oh, I think Damon got the win over James in this gen for sure. He picked up, James picked up 2 points off his physics complex and 2 points off of his farming, and then 1 point off of that commercial district.
Well, he also got one from, he got 4 from his ICS, his interstellar colony ship.
Right.
So that's a pretty big one.
That's true. So that's 9, and then plus 1 for the bump. So you got 10 points this gen.
All of us at the same time.
To finish it up.
This gen could have easily gone much worse for Damon, despite that installation not necessarily being the massive swing he was hoping it could be.
Yeah, and then Damon got basically 6 points for dropping both of those greeneries in combos with his cities, and then 1 point for his livestock. I don't know if his triggering of small animals made a difference, but probably since he did it. So.
And so Dalton playing fish and getting 2 points from viral and 1 from the fish activation, forced to reduce a plant production, and hits Nick, the only person who could relevantly have their plant production reduced at this point, and Nick can only laugh. Like, when it rains, it pours.
That's just brutal, but what else is Dalton going to do? He might as well make a difference.
Yeah, and Dalton also getting really unlucky in the early game here, so probably sympathizes a bit with Nick's position. I mean, sometimes you know, there's luck in this game. That's just that's how it is. It's an undeniable part of playing a game where you know you're drawing cards.
27 and 23 is 50. Yep, nice and easy.
Nick being a good sport about it all.
And we've moved into the final scoring. Players are going to be producing their mega credits, their heat.
Yep.
Yep, slide that.
Damon slides into a second position. So Damon's going to get second and second on Banker and Thermalist, getting 4 points there. James is going to pick up 10 points with his awards. So a total of sort of 15 points to 14. And Damon being so far ahead. However, that physics complex is going to make up a lot of that difference. And I know that Damon doesn't have a lot of points in his cards. In fact, he has -2 because of his corporate stronghold from earlier.
That imported nitrogen's pushed that livestock up to 5 points. The small animals got an even number of points as well, so that's 7. I don't think he has a ton of points on cards. Actually, he might even have negative points on his remaining cards with corporate stronghold.
Yeah.
So I think Damon's going to be ending around 46, 47, depending on what's in between some of those cards.
It was this has been a good one to watch.
And so the question is, does James, or sorry, 47 plus the
15
awards and milestones, but I'm not really counting those because the delta is like basically 0.
Yeah.
So the question is, does James have
No, not me.
No, I get 2 points.
more than, say,
the scientists.
20 points on cards?
5 points for red.
I think they're scoring these right now. Scientist is happening. James gets his 5. Dalton gets his 2.
It's going to be close.
It's going to be very close.
2 for blue. Alright, milestones. 10 for blue. 10 for blue. And 5 for red.
We see Damon jump up there.
Okay.
And then all the other 3 kind of equal after the milestones and awards have been funded.
So green, any greeneries?
I have. Do you want to?
That's kind of good news for Nick. And Nick and Dalton that James is still sitting back there with them, because James does not have a presence on the board. James gets 1 point on the board, and then it's everything else is just cards.
Yep. Yeah, there's no ground game. But Damon doesn't have any ground game really either. So yeah, it's Nick and Dalton who are going to benefit most from ground game at this point.
1, 2, 3.
Dalton has a decent. No, dude, Dalton actually does have a decent ground game. He's getting 4 from his cities.
And I did see Nick remove that yellow cube from the space where we thought there was no cube. So it was Nick way back when. He was boxed in, and that's how he was able to play that.
Yeah, the cloaking device was active.
Yeah.
Red cities, no. Okay, and that city scores nothing there. Okay. Cube resource points. So animal.
Yeah, Damon's scoring nothing for that initial city.
Starting here.
2 plus 2 is 4.
Yeah.
Plus 3 is 7.
It's possible that if he had placed his initial city in one of the more conventional starting locations, that some of his opponents may have just given him some incidental points for some of those good placement bonuses.
Nice. One for yellow. Red.
12. This is
12 for the complex. Yep.
12 points on that physics
Wow.
complex, but man, that's still a ton of space to make up for. With that physics complex only representing 12 points, James, I know, has at least 4 on events, and probably like...
Yeah, it's going to be very close. I think that's it for Damon, if not just the -2 from Corporate Stronghold.
Did they already count his cows and small animals? Yeah,
I think that's what shot him up. So I think Damon's going to sit at 68 when all is said and done.
Yeah, James is going to be close. I know he has 4 on the event.
Nick did have a decent amount of points in his hand, but I think James had more points on cards, and especially Nick going trailing currently 6 points from James. I don't think it's
Yeah, that 6 points is such a big difference, honestly. Because I mean, the terraforming Ganymede itself doesn't actually have a Jovian multiplier, so the TR from that's already baked into his score. And that was kind of his big last gen haymaker.
We see Damon knock those 2 points. Dalton sitting at 62, So 6 away currently. Damon's in there. Now we're going to see Nick.
7, 8, 9.
Dalton closer than I was anticipating. Dalton was definitely viable to win this game going into the last gen if he had the right combination of cards.
From the 14 or the 4.
Yeah.
14 for Nick, I think, is all he has in cards.
18. Yep.
18 with the Jovian. Just one above Dalton at 63, but it's still Damon right now.
Oh yeah, I mean the point cards from James are just so good, like gene repair,
15.
anti-grav, farming, ICS. It's a lot.
The 7. Yep.
Oh my goodness.
Wow, and so he hits 90 and gets to 70. That plant decision to
Wow.
take Nick instead of Damon almost costing James the win.
Yeah.
Oh, and you hear him saying that right now. I realize I should have targeted Damon. Nick went, yeah, you should have.
No, I didn't realize I was scared.
Yeah, that was
Jovian things. But no, hindsight.
That physics complex was awesome. Yeah. For this
Yeah, James, yeah, that is true. The physics complex being able to give him a way to turn the mass converter into points that didn't require him to push deep is really valuable for
Yeah.
James. James does not win this game
If he doesn't stop,
in a 7-gen game.
Thanks for the
So, yeah, really well played all around. Really fun
That
stuff.
was the thing I was.
Yeah, you had so
Yeah.
many cards.
A good game all around, but it is James Liao who moves on to that final table. That's a pretty close game though. 62 to 70 was the swing, right? Dalton.
Yeah,
at
no, that is
62.
very well played. And
Yeah.
even the players, and I mean, Damon and Nick both had, a rough run of luck there that they really couldn't control.
Yeah,
And
Dalton,
so
Dalton and
both
Nick
both
at the
put it,
beginning, yeah.
yeah, Dalton, yeah. So being able to put up a strong showing despite the circumstances also really respectable. So really, really well played all around.
Yeah, a lot closer in terms of spread than I expected as well, just with what seemed like a dominant thing. But I think we were both assuming that James had that Jovian multiplier too, and without that, it ended up being really, really close. That those drafting decisions from Nick really coming into play as well.
Yeah, definitely. If James had an extra Jovian multiplier there, that probably would have been a shutout. But Nick doing a good job keeping the game
Right.
viable for everybody.
Yeah.
Because he almost assuredly cut one of those.
Yeah. Oh, for sure. Yeah, if not both.
Right.
Yeah. Well, congratulations goes out to James, who moves on to the final table. If you missed it when we streamed it live, you can check that out. It's over on the Dice Tower or at WSBG Official's YouTube channel. There's a playlist of all the WSBG events. You can go back and watch it. You can go back and watch the 2022 Terraforming Mars Ring Final. You could watch the 2023 Terraforming Mars Ring Final. You could watch the 2024 Terraforming Mars Ring Final. You might see a familiar face or a couple familiar faces at those tables.
Yeah,
Levi,
this was a lot of fun.
Yeah, thank you so much for commentating. It was just an
Thank you
absolute
for
blast.
having me. It was great.
Yeah, just a blast having you here, and it was great that I could finally invite you to commentate because you weren't sitting at this one.
Yeah, I could actually. There's a Terraforming Mars game that I wasn't in.
Yeah, exactly.
No, this was great. Yeah, really well played game all around. It was a lot of fun.
Yeah. Congratulations to everybody at this table. Great play all around. And if you want to play at one of these semifinal tables or to make your way to a final table as well, make sure to get your tickets at WSBGVegas.com. You can use that code IAMIN to save some money off of your ticket. Levi, do you have anything to say before we wrap up?
No, if you're on the fence about going to this event, definitely go. I mean, it's an incredible event. It's not just the tournaments. You have all of the outer ring events. You have the game library, the people, the environment, the city. It's an unbelievable amount of fun. I cannot recommend it enough.
I'm glad. It's always nice to hear again from the players as well who are there and who have been there. You've been there 3 years in a row and obviously had a good time and obviously had some success too. But generally, I think wherever you place, people have a good time, and that's the most important part.
Yeah, it's super awesome.
Awesome. Well, thanks everybody for watching. Thanks again, Levi, for helping commentate. Go get your tickets to WSBG Vegas, and we will see you there. I'll be there. Levi will be there, and we will see you in Vegas. From all of us here at WSBG Vegas, what are you waiting for? It's time to get in the game.